Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, they fell out when the bricks were removed, photos curled with heat damage, some too scorched to recognize. But the ones still intact all showed the same child, sitting on the same porch, smiling. The porch didn't belong to that house, and the child had never lived there. Rebecca Thorne had purchased the 1930s colonial home in Eastland, Vermont during the autumn of 2018. The quaint two-story structure needed work, that much was clear from the listing, but the bones were good, the price was right, and the small-town setting offered exactly what she wanted: quiet, safety, and a fresh start. A 43-year-old librarian with no children and a recent divorce behind her, Rebecca saw potential in the weathered clapboard siding and creaking porch steps. Her realtor had mentioned the house had been vacant for almost 7 years, passing through a bank foreclosure before landing in her hands. Nobody's lived here since the Caldwells moved out in 2011, the realtor had said, flipping through paperwork, and they were only here for a year. House has had trouble keeping owners. Rebecca hadn't asked why. She didn't believe in bad luck or dark energies, just in opportunities and second chances. Winter came quickly to that corner of Vermont, and Rebecca's renovation plans were put on hold as snow piled against the foundation and frost made the windows rattle. The chimney had been one of the first things the home inspector had flagged. Not safe to use, he'd written in his report. Significant damage to the interior structure. Yet on December 15th, as temperatures dropped below freezing, Rebecca had noticed something peculiar about the old fireplace in the living room. A draft coming from behind the bricks when no draft should exist at all. She'd placed her hand against the stones and felt not just cold air but a vibration, so faint she wondered if she'd imagined it. She called Mason Builders, a small local outfit run by brothers Jeremy and Thomas Mason. They arrived 2 days later, assessing the chimney with practiced eyes. "We'll need to remove some of these bricks to see what's happening," Jeremy had said, his breath visible in the cold living room. Could be anything from animal nests to structural damage. Rebecca had nodded, retreating to the kitchen to work, while the brothers began carefully removing bricks from the inner facade of the fireplace. She would later recall the exact moment when everything changed, the sudden silence from the living room, followed by Thomas's voice, unnaturally quiet. "Ms. Thorne, you might want to see this." The photos had been packed into a space behind the inner brick layer, dozens of them, sealed in plastic bags that had partially melted from years of proximity to heat. As Jeremy pulled them out, they scattered across the hearth, Polaroids and developed photographs, all showing the same little girl with blonde pigtails and large brown eyes. "She's sitting on the Hanover Place porch," Thomas had said, picking up one photo. "That blue railing, those steps, that's the old Hanover house on Maple." Local knowledge, Rebecca would come to understand, was both a blessing and a curse in small towns like Eastland. The police arrived within 30 minutes of her call. Officer Denise Wright, a compact woman with cropped gray hair and watchful eyes, collected the photographs in evidence bags while asking quiet, methodical questions. "How long have you lived here? Have you noticed anything unusual? Any strange visitors, noises?" By evening, the story had begun to take shape, though its edges remained blurry and indistinct. The child in the photographs was Melody Grant, who had disappeared from Eastland in 2007 at age 7. Her family had lived 3 streets away, in a house with a distinctive blue-railed porch, the Hanover Place, now owned by new residents who had no connection to the case. Melody had vanished while walking the 2 blocks from her elementary school to a friend's house for a playdate. Despite an extensive search, no trace of her had ever been found. The Caldwells weren't here when she disappeared, Officer Wright noted, checking dates in her notepad. They bought the house in 2010, stayed less than a year, then moved to Colorado. Before them, it was owned by the Levitts from 2003 to 2009. The Levitts, something about the name caused a ripple of recognition through the room. Thomas Mason glanced at his brother, then looked away. Darrell and Marion Levitt, Officer Wright continued. He worked maintenance at the elementary school. She was a cashier at the pharmacy, no children of their own. The investigation that followed moved with the deliberate pace of small-town law enforcement, thorough but unhurried. The chimney and fireplace were dismantled completely, revealing not just photographs but a small cache of items. A child's elastic hairband with blonde hair still attached, a plastic barrette shaped like a butterfly, and a folded piece of paper containing a class list from Eastland Elementary, 2007, with Melody Grant's name circled in red ink. Rebecca found herself in an unexpectedly central role as the house yielded more secrets. The basement contained a locked room that didn't appear on the original house plans, a small, windowless space with walls recently painted over. Luminol testing revealed traces of blood beneath the fresh paint. Darrell Levitt left town 3 months after the investigation into Melody's disappearance stalled out. Detective James Harmon told Rebecca over coffee at the local diner, 6 weeks after the discovery in her chimney. His wife claimed he took a job in Buffalo, but no one ever confirmed he arrived there. Marion stayed another year, sold the house to the Caldwells, then moved to Florida to live with her sister. "Did anyone ever suspect them?" Rebecca asked, watching steam rise from her mug. "Not officially," Harmon replied, his weathered face revealing nothing. Darrell was interviewed like all school employees. Nothing stood out. No connection to the Grant family, no history of inappropriate behavior. His alibi for the afternoon Melody disappeared checked out. He was fixing a leaking roof at the high school with witnesses. Yet now, as forensic technicians analyzed the decades-old evidence from Rebecca's home, the case against Darrell Levitt was building through tragic fragments. Carpet fibers matching those from Melody's clothing found in the sealed basement room. Cell phone records showing a call from Darrell to Marion minutes after Melody would have passed the school on her way to her friend's house. A statement from a former neighbor who recalled seeing Darrell's truck parked behind the house on afternoons when he should have been at work. The community's response divided along predictable lines. Some residents expressed shock, unable to reconcile the reserved maintenance man with the monster emerging from the evidence. Others nodded grimly, claiming they had always sensed something off about Darrell Levitt. In March 2019, human remains were discovered in a wooded area 20 miles outside of Eastland. Dental records confirmed what many had begun to suspect. The remains belonged to Melody Grant. She had been buried in a shallow grave, wrapped in a shower curtain pattern that matched fragments found in the Levitt's basement drained during a subsequent forensic examination. Marion Levitt, located in Sarasota, Florida, initially denied any knowledge of her husband's actions. 3 interviews later, her story changed. "Sometimes I would come home and the basement door would be locked," she told investigators, her hands trembling around a styrofoam cup. "He said he was working on projects, needed his space. I never questioned it, never wanted to know. When asked about the photographs in the chimney, she looked genuinely confused. Daryl wasn't sentimental. He wouldn't keep pictures. The implication hung in the interview room. Someone else had hidden those photographs. Someone who wanted the truth found eventually. While the investigation proceeded against Marion Levitt as a possible accessory after the fact, authorities in 4 states began reviewing similar cold cases for connections to Daryl Levitt's employment history. 2 additional cases emerged with similar patterns, both involving elementary-aged girls who disappeared within a mile of schools where Levitt had worked as a substitute maintenance worker. Daryl Levitt himself remained elusive. Despite international bulletins and a featured segment on America's Most Wanted, no confirmed sightings had been reported since 2007. For Rebecca Thorne, the quiet librarian who had sought only peace in her colonial fixer-upper, life had acquired a new dimension. She found herself unable to sleep in the house where a child's memory had been sealed away behind brick and mortar. She put the property up for sale 8 months after moving in, taking a significant financial loss. Before leaving, she planted a small flowering cherry tree in the front yard, with a simple granite marker bearing Melody's name and the dates of her short life. The chimney was rebuilt by the Mason brothers, who refused payment for the work. No trace of the original structure remained, yet something of its secret had permeated the foundations of the house itself. Despite being priced well below market value, the property remained unsold for over 2 years. On the 5th anniversary of Rebecca's discovery, a small gathering assembled beneath the now flourishing cherry tree. Melody's parents, older now and carrying their grief like a familiar burden, stood alongside former classmates who had grown into young adults. Rebecca returned for the occasion, bringing books she had carefully selected from her library's collection, stories about courage, memory, and justice. The photographs from the chimney, those that could be salvaged, had been returned to the Grant family after the investigation closed. All except one which remained in the case file, a picture showing Melody on that blue-railed porch, smiling directly at the camera. In the background, visible through a window reflection, was the faint outline of a man's face watching. Some mysteries reveal themselves in layers, unfolding slowly like the seasons. Others leave questions that echo through empty rooms, unanswered and perhaps unanswerable. In Eastland, Vermont, where winters are long and memories longer still, the community continues to watch for a man who might return to the scene of his crime, drawn by whatever dark compulsion led him to preserve those photographs in the first place. And in homes across town, parents still remind their children, never walk alone. Crime, too, it wasn't just decoration, it was hiding something. When they peeled it back, a doorframe appeared, perfectly centered on the wall with no hinges, no knob, no seam, scratched into the baseboard below it. She doesn't like being painted shut. The home had belonged to Marcus Delaney for nearly 30 years before his daughter, Elise, inherited it in the fall of 2018. Marcus had been a quiet man, a retired postal worker who kept to himself in the small town of Burling Creek, Oregon. His neighbors described him as pleasant but private, the kind of person who would wave from his porch but rarely engage in conversation. His home, a modest 2-story craftsman built in 1927, sat at the end of Spruce Lane, partially hidden behind a row of old cedar trees. Elise hadn't visited her father in nearly 5 years before his death. Their relationship had been strained since her mother's disappearance in 1992. At that time, Elise was only 12 years old. According to police reports, Vivian Delaney had left for a doctor's appointment on the morning of October 17th, but never arrived. Her car was found 2 days later at a hiking trail entrance 40 miles away, keys still in the ignition, her purse in the passenger seat. Despite an extensive search of the surrounding forest and a thorough investigation, Vivian was never found. Marcus had been the primary suspect for a brief period, but with no evidence connecting him to his wife's disappearance and a solid alibi. He had been at work, confirmed by multiple colleagues. The case eventually went cold. The prevailing theory became that Vivian had walked into the woods voluntarily and met with some accident, or perhaps had chosen to disappear and start a new life elsewhere. But Elise had always harbored doubts about her father's involvement. When she arrived at the house to clear out her father's belongings, Elise felt the weight of unresolved memories pressing down on her. The house smelled exactly as she remembered, a mixture of pipe tobacco, old books, and wood polish. Everything was meticulously organized, reflecting her father's orderly nature. In the days that followed, she sorted through decades of her father's life, finding little that surprised her until she reached the second floor. The upstairs hallway had been renovated since her last visit. The formerly cream-colored walls were now covered in a pale blue wallpaper with a subtle floral pattern. Something about the way the wallpaper had been applied caught Elise's attention, a slight unevenness in the center of the wall opposite the bathroom. Running her fingers across it, she felt what seemed like the outline of a rectangular frame beneath. Curiosity piqued, Elise began carefully peeling back the wallpaper. As the adhesive released its grip, the outline of a door frame emerged. But this was no ordinary doorway. There was no door, just the frame sealed into the wall, painted over multiple times before being concealed by wallpaper. And there, at the bottom of the frame, scratched into the baseboard, were those disturbing words, "She doesn't like being painted shut." The discovery sent a chill through Elise. She immediately called local contractor Thomas Reeves to examine the wall. Using specialized equipment, Thomas confirmed that there was indeed a sealed doorway leading to what appeared to be a small room, approximately 6 by 8 feet, that didn't align with any known part of the house's original floor plan. In these old houses, finding sealed rooms isn't uncommon, Thomas explained to Elise. Sometimes spaces were closed off during renovations, or rooms were partitioned differently. But the way this was done, multiple layers of paint, then wallpaper, suggests someone really wanted to conceal it. With Thomas's help, Elise decided to open the hidden space. They carefully cut through the drywall that had been installed over what once had been a doorway. As they created an opening large enough to peer inside, the beam from Thomas's flashlight revealed a room devoid of furniture but not empty. The walls were covered with photographs, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes, all connected by red string, like something from a detective's investigation board. Most disturbing of all were the photographs, dozens of images of Elise's mother, Vivian, many taken from angles suggesting she hadn't known she was being photographed. There were also receipts, maps marked with red X's, and a spiral notebook filled with dates and times in her father's distinctive handwriting. "You should call the police," Thomas advised, his voice now carrying an edge of concern. Detective Sarah Harmon arrived within the hour. A veteran of Burling Creek's small police force, she remembered the original investigation into Vivian's disappearance. As she examined the hidden room's contents, her expression grew increasingly troubled. "These photos," she said, pointing to a series of images showing Vivian getting into her car on what appeared to be the morning of her disappearance, "these weren't in the original case file. And this notebook, your father was tracking your mother's movements for months before she vanished." The investigation that followed revealed a different Marcus Delaney than the quiet, ordinary man his neighbors and colleagues had known. The spiral notebook contained detailed records of Vivian's daily routines, friends she met with, and phone conversations overheard. There were also references to arguments. She threatened to take Elise again and claims she found someone who understands her. 4 days into the new investigation, police brought ground-penetrating radar to search the property. In the backyard, beneath an immaculately maintained rose garden that Marcus had planted the year after Vivian disappeared, they found disturbed soil at a depth of 6 feet. Excavation revealed human remains, which DNA testing would later confirm belonged to Vivian Delaney. But perhaps the most chilling discovery came from a lockbox found hidden in the attic, containing a journal written in Marcus's hand. The final entry, dated just 2 weeks before his death from heart failure, read, "I've kept her close for 26 years. When I'm gone, will she finally be free? I've sealed her away twice now, once in the ground and once in that room. But sometimes, at night, I still hear her moving behind the wall." The case revealed how thoroughly Marcus had constructed his alibi. He had taken a day off work, but arranged for a coworker to clock in using his employee card. He had driven Vivian's car to the hiking trail himself after carefully wiping it of his own fingerprints. For 26 years, he had maintained the fiction of the devoted husband whose wife had mysteriously vanished. When asked why she thought her father had created and then sealed the hidden room, Elise could only speculate. "I think it was his confession space," she said, "a place where he didn't have to pretend. Maybe sealing it was his way of trying to bury what he'd done, just like he buried my mother." The town of Burling Creek struggled to reconcile the Marcus they had known with the man revealed by the investigation. Neighbors recalled his dedication to his rose garden, how carefully he tended each bush, especially during the anniversary of Vivian's disappearance each October. "He would spend hours out there," said neighbor Dorothy Mills. "We all thought it was his way of honoring her memory. None of us could have imagined he was standing above where he'd buried her." As for the scratched message that had first alerted Elise, she doesn't like being painted shut. Police believe Marcus himself had written it during a moment of psychological distress or guilt. According to a forensic psychologist consulted on the case, such messages can represent a perpetrator's subconscious desire for discovery, especially in cases where the guilt becomes too heavy to bear alone. Elise sold the house 6 months later, unable to continue living with its secrets. The new owners demolished it, building a modern home in its place. But the story of the wallpapered doorframe and what it concealed became part of local lore, a reminder that sometimes the quietest neighbors harbor the darkest secrets, and that walls, like people, can hide terrible truths behind seemingly ordinary facades. The rose garden was removed during construction, replaced with a concrete patio and fire pit. But according to the new owners, no matter how hot they build their fires, that corner of the yard always feels unnaturally cold, as if something beneath the ground still remembers and waits and refuses to stay buried. Crime 3, all brown, all long, all hanging from the ceiling like bodies. Pockets were stuffed with children's drawings, pacifiers, single socks. The coats had no labels, but every collar had something handwritten inside, a different name followed by "Mine Now." The discovery was made on October 12, 2017, in the basement of a quiet suburban home in Millfield, Pennsylvania. A home that had belonged to Elena Winters for nearly 40 years. A 73-year-old widow who the neighbors described as pleasant but private. Elena was the kind of neighbor who would wave from her porch but rarely engage in conversation beyond discussing the weather. She never hosted gatherings, never invited anyone inside. Alina had lived in that white colonial-style house on Oakwood Drive since 1980, when she and her husband, Richard, moved in. After Richard's death from cancer in 1998, Alina continued living there alone. She worked as a librarian at the local elementary school until her retirement in 2012. The children loved Mrs. Winters, who always had a kind word and book recommendations for them. She had a special way with the shy ones, the quiet ones who often got overlooked. Perhaps that's why no one questioned her occasional gifts to certain children, small trinkets, hand-knitted scarves, or cookies wrapped in wax paper. Perhaps that's why parents didn't mind when she offered to watch their children after school while they finished work. Alina was trusted. Alina was kind. Alina had no children of her own. The first sign that something wasn't right came when 8-year-old Lily Reeves didn't arrive home from school on September 28, 2017. Lily's mother, Diane, had called Alina when Lily was 20 minutes late, assuming her daughter had stopped at the widow's house, as she sometimes did. Alina said she hadn't seen Lily that day. The police were called. A search began. Lily was found 3 days later, wandering along Route 16, 5 miles from town. She was disoriented, wearing clothes that weren't hers, including a brown coat several sizes too large. When questioned, Lily could only remember fragments: a sweet-tasting hot chocolate, a room with no windows, and the coat lady who kept calling her Sarah. Detective Marcus Powell led the investigation, initially focusing on registered sex offenders in the area, but something about Lily's mention of the coat lady nagged at him. When he interviewed Alina as part of the neighborhood canvass, he noticed her hands trembling as she clutched her teacup. "I've always had a tremor," she explained with a gentle smile. "Richard used to tease me about spilling my coffee." Powell nodded, making notes. He asked if he could use her bathroom. Alina directed him upstairs. On his way back down, he paused at the basement door, noticing 3 heavy-duty locks on the outside. "That's a lot of security for a basement," he commented casually. "Oh, there was a break-in through the cellar doors years ago," Alina replied. "I get nervous living alone." Powell left but returned the next morning with a search warrant. Alina seemed genuinely confused when he presented it. "I don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've lived here for 40 years. I've never harmed anyone." The basement door was opened. The stairwell was dark. As the officers descended, their flashlights revealed a sight that would haunt them for years to come. 37 identical brown coats hanging from hooks mounted in the ceiling. They swayed slightly in the draft from the open door, creating the unsettling impression of bodies suspended in air. Each coat's pockets contained small items: a hair ribbon, a toy car, a school ID card, a child's drawing. Inside each collar, written in neat handwriting, was a name: Sarah, mine now; David, mine now; Jason, mine now; and on the most recent coat, Lily, mine now. Against the far wall stood a child-sized bed with restraints hidden beneath cheerful dinosaur sheets. A bookshelf held children's books arranged by reading level. A table had coloring books and crayons, all meticulously organized. In the corner was a small chemical toilet and a sink. Alina didn't resist arrest. She sat in her living room, hands folded in her lap as officers processed the scene. When Detective Powell finally questioned her, he expected denial or perhaps a breakdown. Instead, Alina spoke with unsettling clarity. "They were lonely children," she explained, her voice steady. "No one noticed them like I did. No one loved them properly. I gave them attention. I gave them a name that suited them better." As the investigation deepened, police discovered a pattern spanning decades. Alina would identify vulnerable children, usually those with distracted parents or signs of neglect. She would build trust slowly, offering small kindnesses. And then when opportunity presented itself, she would give them special hot chocolate laced with sedatives. Most children were returned within days with no memory of what had happened. Some had visits multiple times. The disturbing reality was that many of these incidents had never been reported. Parents assumed children had wandered off or stayed with friends. The children themselves, disoriented and confused, often couldn't articulate what had happened. And Alina was careful. She never kept them long enough to trigger intensive searches, until Lily. What made Lily different, according to Alina's journal, found hidden behind the basement bookshelf, Lily had shown remarkable potential to become Sarah. The journal contained hundreds of entries chronicling Alina's interactions with local children, assessments of their suitability as replacements, and detailed plans for their transformations. Forensic psychologists attempting to understand Alina's motives focused on entries about her daughter Sarah, who, according to the journal, had died of pneumonia in 1979 at age 7. Yet public records showed no evidence that Alina and Richard Winters ever had children. "The coats are how I keep them with me," Alina told Dr. Renee Martinez during her psychological evaluation. "Each child gets to try being someone else for a little while, someone better loved, and I get to remember how it feels to be needed." Hair samples from the coats matched 23 different children from the Millfield area over a span of 38 years. DNA testing eventually identified 15 of them, now adults who had no recollection of Alina or her basement. The remaining samples couldn't be matched to any known individuals. The case against Alina Winters ended before trial when she suffered a massive stroke in pretrial detention. She remains in a long-term care facility, unable to speak or move independently. The journal continues to be analyzed by FBI behavioral specialists who believe there may be connections to at least 7 unsolved missing children cases across Pennsylvania and Ohio. The house on Oakwood Drive remains empty. Despite multiple price reductions, no one has purchased it. Local teenagers occasionally dare each other to approach the property at night, claiming they can hear the rustle of coats swinging in the basement, though authorities removed all evidence years ago. Lily Reeves, now 14, still sleeps with her bedroom door open and lights on. She refuses to wear any type of coat, even in winter. Her mother reports that she sometimes calls out in her sleep, saying the same phrase over and over, "My name isn't Sarah." The 37 brown coats remain in evidence storage at the Millfield Police Department. Detective Powell, who retired last year, admitted in his final interview that he still dreams about them, hanging silently, patiently, as if waiting for someone to wear them again. And sometimes, when the evidence room is quiet late at night, the duty officer swears they can hear the faint sound of a woman's voice, whispering different names, followed always by the same 2 words, "Mine now." Crime 4, dozens of overlapping prints, palms, thumbs, even bare toes, all from inside the tub. When dusted, they revealed small writing etched into the enamel beneath the grime, "I didn't drown alone." Detective Sarah Colton stood motionless in the cramped bathroom of apartment 317, the lingering scent of bleach filling her nostrils. The apartment belonged to Eliza Mercer, a 32-year-old elementary school librarian who hadn't shown up for work in 3 days. The landlord had done a wellness check after receiving concerned calls from the school principal. The apartment was oddly pristine, dishes washed and put away, bed made with hospital corners, not a speck of dust on any surface. Only the bathroom showed signs of recent, frantic cleaning. And then there was the bathtub, which under the specialized light revealed more fingerprints than Colton had ever seen concentrated in one place. "What do you make of this?" she asked her partner, Detective Ray Gaines, who was examining the drain. "Someone tried real hard to clean this place," he replied, not looking up. "But they didn't know luminol would still pick up traces of blood in the grout between these tiles." Eliza Mercer had lived in Millfield, Ohio for just over 2 years. She'd moved there after finalizing her divorce from Marcus Mercer, a pharmaceutical sales representative from Cincinnati. Neighbors described her as quiet, polite, someone who smiled in the hallway but never stopped to chat. She kept to herself but wasn't unfriendly, just private. Her sister, Caroline Webb, drove in from Columbus when she got the call from police. She sat in the precinct interview room, clutching a paper cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Eliza was cautious, Caroline explained, her voice barely above a whisper. Especially after the divorce, she had to be. "Cautious how?" Colton asked gently. "She always locked her doors, never posted her location online. She even changed her route to work sometimes, just in case." Caroline paused, swallowing hard. Marcus didn't take the divorce well. He used to tell her that if he couldn't have her, no one would. Caroline revealed that Marcus had been arrested once for violating a restraining order 6 months after the divorce. He'd shown up at Eliza's previous apartment in the middle of the night, inebriated and belligerent. Eliza had moved to Millfield shortly after, telling almost no one where she was going. The investigation turned toward Marcus, who now lived with a new girlfriend in Cincinnati. When questioned, he seemed genuinely shocked by Eliza's disappearance. His girlfriend confirmed they'd been together the entire weekend Eliza had gone missing. His phone records and credit card statements showed no activity near Millfield in over a year. Meanwhile, forensics completed their analysis of the apartment. The blood traces in the bathroom belonged to Eliza, but the amount was consistent with a minor injury, not a fatal wound. The fingerprints in the bathtub were puzzling. They all belonged to Eliza, but were positioned in ways that suggested she had been scrambling, trying to climb out, her fingers and palms sliding against the smooth surface. As for the etched message, "I didn't drown alone," handwriting analysis confirmed it matched Eliza's, but it wasn't recent. The etchings had accumulated soap scum and hard water deposits, suggesting they'd been there for months. The investigation expanded outward. Colton interviewed Eliza's colleagues at Millfield Elementary, where she'd been a beloved figure who ran reading programs for underprivileged students. One detail caught Colton's attention. Eliza had recently seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly. She'd get these texts that would make her face just fall, said Meredith Sawyer, a third-grade teacher who often had lunch with Eliza. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd always say it was just her sister or something about her car needing repairs, but I could tell she was lying. Eliza's phone was missing, but her service provider supplied her records. In the weeks before her disappearance, she'd received dozens of calls from a prepaid phone that couldn't be traced. More concerning were the text messages from unknown numbers, messages that had been deleted from her cloud backup but were still logged by her carrier. "I see you walking home every day. You look pretty when you're scared. Your bathroom light was on until 11:42 last night." The last text, sent just hours before she was believed to have disappeared. Time to come clean. Detective Gaines reviewed security camera footage from businesses around Eliza's apartment building. 3 days before her disappearance, a camera from the laundromat across the street captured Eliza walking home, repeatedly glancing over her shoulder. A hooded figure maintained a consistent distance behind her, always just at the edge of the frame, face obscured. Caroline moved temporarily into a hotel in Millfield, unable to return to her life in Columbus while her sister remained missing. During a follow-up interview, she revealed something she'd initially forgotten. When Eliza first moved here, she mentioned meeting someone, a man who lived in her building. She said he was kind, helped her carry groceries once. Caroline's voice trembled, but then she stopped mentioning him. When I asked about him a few months later, she just said it didn't work out. The building's tenant records showed that apartment 319, just down the hall from Eliza's, had been occupied by a James Farrell, 36, who had moved out 3 weeks before Eliza's disappearance. The landlord described him as a model tenant who always paid rent early and never caused problems. He'd left without much notice, simply saying he'd found a better place. When detectives ran Farrell's name through their databases, they found no criminal record. In fact, they found almost nothing. A thin credit history starting only 3 years ago, no social media presence, minimal digital footprint. It was as if James Farrell hadn't existed before moving to Millfield. A breakthrough came when Caroline was going through some of Eliza's personal effects that the police had released back to her. In a book of poetry, she found a photograph of Eliza standing next to a man on what appeared to be a hiking trail. On the back, written in Eliza's handwriting, James and me, Shawnee State Forest, June 2023. The man in the photo wasn't particularly remarkable, average height, trim build, pleasant but unremarkable features. What caught Detective Colton's attention was his eyes, pale, intense, staring not at the camera but at Eliza, with an expression that in hindsight seemed possessive rather than affectionate. When she ran the photo through facial recognition software, she got a hit, not for James Farrell, but for Richard Whitaker, who had been investigated but never charged in connection with the disappearance of a woman in Pennsylvania 5 years earlier. That woman, like Eliza, had never been found. As the investigation deepened, detectives discovered a pattern. Every few years, Whitaker would appear in a new town under a new name, often targeting women who were vulnerable in some way, recently divorced, new to town, socially isolated. He would form relationships with them, relationships that would suddenly end, followed by the women either disappearing or, in 2 cases, being found dead under circumstances that initially appeared to be suicides. One of these cases involved a woman found drowned in her bathtub in Albany, New York. The medical examiner had ruled it a suicide, noting the woman's history of depression. But looking at the case now with fresh eyes, Detective Colton noticed similarities to Eliza's case: the obsessively clean apartment, the missing phone, a concerned relative who insisted the victim had been afraid of someone. 2 months into the investigation, Eliza's car was found abandoned in a long-term parking lot at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. Inside the trunk, carefully wrapped in plastic, was her phone. When forensics managed to access it, they found hundreds of photos, all taken of Eliza without her knowledge. Eliza sleeping, Eliza at her kitchen window, Eliza in her bathroom, unaware she was being watched. The last photo had been taken on the night she disappeared. It showed Eliza in her bathtub, eyes wide with terror, water up to her chin, a hand, not her own, visible at the edge of the frame, holding her shoulder underwater. Despite an interstate manhunt, Richard Whitaker, or whatever his real name might be, remained elusive. Security footage showed him boarding a flight to Seattle the day after Eliza's disappearance, but the trail went cold from there. Perhaps he'd already established a new identity, a new life, was already looking for his next victim. As for Eliza, her body was never found. The case remains open, the evidence suggesting she was killed in her own bathtub, then removed from the apartment somehow, despite the building's security cameras and attentive neighbors. All that remained of her final moments were those desperate fingerprints inside the tub, silent testimony to her struggle to survive. And that haunting message scratched into the enamel months before her death, as if some part of her had sensed what was coming. I didn't drown alone. In Millfield, residents now lock their doors more carefully. Women walk in pairs after dark, and in apartment 317, which remains vacant, the landlord has replaced the old bathtub with a new one, but sometimes, late at night, tenants in neighboring units swear they can hear the sound of water running, of splashing, of someone gasping for air. Detective Colton still keeps Eliza's case file on her desk. Every few months, another report comes in from somewhere in the country. Another woman gone missing, another too clean apartment, another man who appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. And each time, Colton wonders if this will be the case that finally leads her to the truth, to Eliza, and to all the others who didn't drown alone. Crime 5, instead of a chime, a recording would play, faint and garbled. A child saying, "Please let me in." No one knew how it had been installed. Inside the speaker box, they found a tiny tooth, wrapped in a yellowed receipt with the words, "One returned." The Larsons had lived in the brick colonial on Maple Street for nearly 18 years. Sarah and Daniel, both in their early 50s now, had raised their 2 children there, both grown and moved away to pursue careers in larger cities. The house in Hammond, Indiana had started to feel too big for just the 2 of them, with its 4 bedrooms and finished basement. They'd been casually discussing downsizing for months. Sarah was a high school English teacher who'd volunteered at the local library's reading program every summer. Daniel worked as an accountant at a firm 20 minutes away. Neighbors described them as quiet, kind, and unremarkable. The type of people who always returned borrowed lawn tools and waved from their driveway, but rarely attended block parties. Their house stood at the end of a cul-de-sac, backing up against a small wooded area that separated their neighborhood from a shopping center. The trees provided privacy and a buffer from the commercial noise, something Sarah particularly appreciated when grading papers on their back deck. The doorbell had been installed when they moved in, an older model with a simple analog chime. It had never malfunctioned before October 17th, 2023. That evening, Sarah was alone. Daniel had left for a 3-day accounting conference in Chicago. At 8:46 p.m., as recorded by their security camera, the doorbell rang. But instead of the familiar 2-note chime, a distorted sound emerged from the speaker, what sounded unmistakably like a child's voice saying, "Please let me in." Sarah, who had been reading in the living room, approached the door cautiously. Through the peephole, she saw nothing but her empty, well-lit porch. She called through the door, asking who was there. No response. She checked the security camera feed on her phone, which showed no one had approached the door in the past 30 minutes. Uneasy but rationalizing it as an electronic glitch, Sarah returned to her book. 43 minutes later, at 9:29 p.m., the doorbell sounded again. The same child's voice, slightly clearer this time, "Please let me in." This time, Sarah called Daniel, who suggested the doorbell might be picking up interference from another wireless device, perhaps a baby monitor from the new family that had moved in 3 houses down. Sarah spent a restless night, waking at small sounds, but the doorbell remained silent until morning. She mentioned the incident to her colleague Meredith at school the next day. Meredith suggested calling an electrician, which Sarah did during her lunch break. Frank Hollies, a local electrician for over 30 years, arrived that afternoon after Sarah returned from work. He examined the doorbell system, testing the wiring and checking for signs of damage or tampering. Finding nothing immediately wrong, he disconnected the doorbell unit from the wall to examine it more closely. That's when he discovered something that would change everything. Inside the plastic casing of the doorbell speaker, wedged against the small electronic board, was a child's tooth. A primary incisor, yellowed with age, wrapped carefully in what appeared to be an old receipt. When Frank carefully unfolded the paper, 3 handwritten words were visible in faded blue ink. One returned. Sarah's first instinct was to call the police. Officer Renee Wilson took the initial report, photographing the tooth and the note before placing them in evidence bags. She asked the standard questions. Had they renovated recently? Did they know the house's previous owners? Had they experienced any other strange occurrences? The Larsons had purchased the home from an older couple, the Wexlers, who had lived there for nearly 30 years before retiring to Florida. As far as Sarah knew, the Wexlers had raised their family there without incident. The doorbell had never been replaced. Detective Marcus Phelps was assigned to the case 3 days later, after preliminary testing confirmed the tooth was indeed human, likely belonging to a child between 6 and 8 years old. Carbon dating suggested it had been there for approximately 40 years, well before the Larsons had purchased the home. Detective Phelps began a methodical investigation into the house's history. The Wexlers were contacted in Florida. Herbert Wexler, now 83, sounded genuinely confused by the inquiry. He and his wife Margaret had raised 3 children in that house, all of whom were alive and well. He couldn't recall any unusual incidents involving neighborhood children. Yes, children had sometimes played in the woods behind the house, but nothing alarming had ever happened. The receipt, barely legible after decades inside the doorbell, bore a partial date, June 12, 198. The last digit was smudged beyond recognition. The only other visible text was a faded letterhead, Eastside Pharmacy. Eastside Pharmacy had closed in 1997. Its records had been partly digitized, but many paper records from the 1980s were lost in a basement flood in 1994. The investigation seemed to be hitting dead ends at every turn. Meanwhile, Sarah had begun experiencing what she described as a constant sensation of being watched when alone in the house. She would find doors she was certain she had closed standing slightly ajar. The sound of footsteps on the second floor when no one else was home. Small objects, a hairbrush, a coffee mug, Daniel's reading glasses would disappear, only to reappear days later in unexpected places. Daniel, initially skeptical, installed additional security cameras throughout the house. The footage revealed nothing unusual, though Sarah noted that the disturbances seemed to occur in the camera's blind spots, as if whatever was causing them knew exactly where the cameras were positioned. On November 4th, the doorbell incident repeated. This time, Daniel was home to hear it. The child's voice was clearer. "Please let me in, I'm cold." A review of the security footage once again showed no one at the door. That evening, they decided to stay at a hotel. They called Detective Phelps from their room, who agreed to have an officer drive by their house periodically through the night. Officer Kevin Ramirez reported nothing unusual during his 2 a.m. drive-by, but at 4:17 a.m., the station received a call from the Larsons' next-door neighbor, Eleanor Hutchins. She had been awakened by what sounded like a child crying in the Larsons' backyard. When she looked out her window, she saw what appeared to be a small figure standing at the edge of the woods. Thinking it was a lost child, she had gone outside to investigate, but the figure had disappeared between the trees. Detective Phelps expanded his investigation to include any reports of missing children in the area dating back to the 1970s. The Hammond Public Library's newspaper archives revealed 3 cases of children who had gone missing within a 5-mile radius of the house between 1978 and 1984. 2 had been resolved, 1 child found safe after wandering away, another sadly discovered drowned in a local pond. The 3rd case, that of 7-year-old Timothy Gaines, remained unsolved. Timothy had disappeared on June 10, 1981, while walking home from a friend's house just 3 blocks from the Larsons' home. An extensive search had yielded no results. His parents, both now deceased, had never moved from their home, hoping their son would one day return. 2 days after learning about Timothy, Sarah was putting away laundry in the guest bedroom when she found a small, worn teddy bear she didn't recognize sitting on the bed. It had a faded blue ribbon around its neck and one eye missing. When she picked it up, she noticed a name embroidered on its foot, Timmy. That evening, when Daniel returned from work, Sarah showed him the teddy bear. As they examined it in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. This time, the voice said clearly, "I found my way back. Please let me in." Daniel strode to the front door, determined to catch whoever was playing this cruel joke. He flung it open, but the porch was empty. As he stepped outside to look around, Sarah screamed from inside the house. On the kitchen counter where they had left the teddy bear now sat another tooth, and another yellowed receipt, this one with the words, "To returned." The police cordoned off the house. Forensic technicians combed every inch. They found nothing to explain how the second tooth had appeared, no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints other than the Larsons, no footprints in the soft soil of the flower beds. The security cameras had recorded no movement in the kitchen during the time when the tooth must have been placed there. The second tooth was determined to be another primary tooth, likely from the same child as the first. DNA testing was attempted, but degradation over time made results inconclusive. They could not definitively link the teeth to Timothy Gaines. Sarah and Daniel moved out of the house temporarily, staying with their daughter in Indianapolis. Detective Phelps continued his investigation, which now included interviews with retired police officers who had worked on Timothy's disappearance, neighbors who had lived in the area since the 1980s, and anyone who had known the Wexlers during their time in the house. A breakthrough came when Phelps located Margaret Wexler's sister, Caroline, in a nursing home in Bloomington. Caroline, suffering from early dementia, had moments of clarity between confused episodes. During one such moment, she mentioned that Herbert had always been troubled by that boy in the woods. When pressed further, Caroline revealed that in the early 1980s, Herbert had frequently mentioned seeing a child watching their house from the edge of the woods. Margaret had dismissed it, saying Herbert worked too much and was stressed, but Herbert had been adamant the boy would stand there for hours, never approaching, just watching. Eventually, Herbert had stopped mentioning it, and Caroline had assumed the sightings had stopped. Meanwhile, the Larsons had decided they could not return to the house. They put it on the market, disclosing the recent events to potential buyers as required by law. The house sat empty for months, visited only by Detective Phelps and occasional real estate agents showing the property to brave or skeptical buyers. In April 2024, an elderly woman named Ruth Collins purchased the house at well below asking price. Ruth, a retired nurse with a no-nonsense attitude, dismissed the stories as overactive imaginations and moved in with her cat and extensive collection of mystery novels. 2 weeks after Ruth moved in, she called Detective Phelps. She had been replacing the old doorbell with a new video doorbell system when she found something wedged deep in the wall cavity, a small, faded blue backpack. Inside were a child's clothing, a few toys, and a wallet containing a school ID card for Timothy Gaines. As forensics processed this new evidence, Ruth made another discovery while clearing overgrown bushes at the edge of her property where it met the woods. Partially buried beneath years of accumulated soil and leaves was a small collection of children's items, a rusted lunch box, decayed books, and a makeshift shelter of sticks and plastic sheeting, long collapsed. The investigation shifted to Herbert Wexler, who was brought in for questioning. Under the pressure of the new evidence, his carefully maintained facade began to crack. He admitted that in the summer of 1981, he had found a boy living in a crude shelter in the woods behind his house. The boy was dirty, malnourished, and refused to speak. Herbert had left food for him but never reported finding him, claiming he was afraid of getting involved. Over time, Herbert said the boy had disappeared. He assumed he had moved on or been found. He denied any knowledge of how the boy's belongings had ended up inside his walls or how the teeth had been placed in the doorbell. The case remains officially open. Timothy Gaines' remains have never been found. The teeth from the doorbell could not be conclusively identified. Herbert Wexler, released due to insufficient evidence and his advancing age, died of natural causes in August 2024. Ruth Collins still lives in the house on Maple Street. She reports no unusual occurrences, no strange voices from the doorbell, which she replaced with a modern digital system. The woods behind the house have been partially cleared for an expansion of the shopping center. But occasionally, residents in the neighborhood report seeing a small figure standing at the edge of the remaining trees at dusk. A child, they say, who watches the houses for hours before disappearing into the deepening shadows. And sometimes, when the wind blows just right, those walking past the Larsons' old house swear they can hear a faint voice saying, "Please let me in." Whether it's the restless spirit of a lost child seeking closure, the psychological echo of a community's unresolved trauma, or simply the power of suggestion in a neighborhood now defined by its dark history, the mystery of the child's voice in the doorbell continues to haunt Hammond, Indiana. A reminder that some stories have no neat endings, only lingering questions that whisper through the years like a child's voice carried on the wind. Crime 6, insulation was ripped out, replaced with plush toys, rotting, chewed, some with their eyes removed. Inside the torso of a rabbit, they found a hard object, a locket with a photo of a woman crying. She was standing in front of that same wall. The home at 418 Maple Street in Northfield, Minnesota, had belonged to Alina Winters for nearly 40 years. The kind of quiet, unassuming woman neighbors would describe as keeping to herself, though they meant it kindly. She was 73 when the rental company purchased her property after her death from natural causes in January of 2019. The renovation crew didn't expect much beyond routine updates to the modest two-bedroom bungalow until they opened the walls. Alina had been born in Northfield in 1946, the only child of Harold and Judith Winters. Former neighbors who remembered the family described Harold as stern and Judith as nervous. School records showed Alina was a bright student who rarely spoke in class. Her high school yearbook listed no activities, no clubs, just a small photo of a girl with downcast eyes and a half-smile that never quite reached those eyes. After high school, Alina attended the local community college for 2 years, studying early childhood education. She worked at the Sunshine Daycare Center for 41 years until her retirement in 2009. Former coworkers described her as reliable, punctual, and good with the children, though never particularly warm. Alina never married, never had children of her own. Her parents had passed away in the early 1990s, leaving her the house on Maple Street. Her routine rarely varied: grocery shopping on Tuesdays, church on Sundays, occasional trips to the library. Neighbors would sometimes see her walking slowly through her garden in the evenings, inspecting her roses with careful attention. She always asked about my kids, remembered Sarah Donahue, who lived next door for 15 years. She remembered their birthdays, their favorite colors. She'd leave little gifts on the porch sometimes, usually stuffed animals. The kids loved them. The stuffed animals, that detail would later take on a different meaning. When Alina didn't answer her door for 3 days in January 2019, it was Sarah who called the police. They found Alina in her bed, apparently having died peacefully in her sleep. The medical examiner determined she had suffered a stroke. With no living relatives, her modest estate was processed according to her will: a few charitable donations, funds for a simple funeral, and the remainder going to the Sunshine Daycare Center. The house sat empty for 6 months before Riverwood Properties purchased it. Their plan was simple: a quick renovation to modernize the interior while maintaining the charming exterior, then flip it for a tidy profit in Northfield's growing market. The first unusual discovery came when the renovation crew began removing the outdated kitchen cabinets. Behind them, they found dozens of small Polaroid photographs taped to the wall, all pictures of stuffed animals arranged in various poses: bears having tea parties, rabbits lined up in rows, a large elephant surrounded by smaller animals as if teaching a class. "We figured she was just eccentric," said Marcus Weber, the lead contractor. "Older people living alone develop quirks. We documented it for the property company and moved on." The real shock came 3 days later when they began opening up the walls to update the insulation and wiring. The first wall in what had been Alina's bedroom contained no insulation at all. Instead, the entire cavity was filled with stuffed animals. Not the clean, gift store variety, but worn, soiled toys that had clearly been handled extensively. Many had been altered, eyes removed, limbs reattached in wrong positions, faces drawn over with marker. "The smell was what hit us first," Weber recalled. "A deep, musty odor of decay. These toys had been in there for years, maybe decades." As the crew continued their work, they found similar caches in nearly every wall of the house. Some toys were relatively new, others so deteriorated they crumbled at the touch. Conservative estimates put the total at over 300 stuffed animals concealed within the walls. But it was what they found inside one particular toy, a faded blue rabbit with a stitched smile, that transformed this from an oddity to something darker. Sewn inside the rabbit's torso was a silver locket. Inside the locket was a photograph of a woman, visibly distressed, tears streaming down her face. She stood in front of the very wall where the rabbit had been hidden. Detective Melissa Harmon of the Northfield Police Department was assigned to investigate. "Initially, we weren't sure if we were dealing with a crime or just unusual behavior," she explained, "but that photograph required answers." The woman in the photo was estimated to be in her mid-30s, with shoulder-length dark hair. Her clothing suggested the picture was taken sometime in the late 1980s or early 1990s. But most disturbing was her expression: unmistakable fear, mouth slightly open as if in mid-plea. A search through missing persons reports from that era yielded no obvious matches in the immediate area. Alina's employment records showed nothing unusual: perfect attendance, positive performance reviews, no reports of misconduct. We interviewed former coworkers, neighbors, anyone who knew Alina. Detective Harmon said. No one reported anything suspicious. She was described as quiet, maybe sad, but never threatening or dangerous. The investigation took an unexpected turn when police examined Alina's banking records. Every few months for nearly 30 years, she had withdrawn substantial cash amounts, between $500 and $1,000, with no clear explanation for the expenditures. Her lifestyle was frugal. She drove the same car for 20 years and rarely traveled. Then came the discovery of the notebooks. Hidden behind a false panel in Alina's closet, detectives found 17 spiral-bound notebooks filled with meticulous handwriting. Each entry followed the same format: a date, a name, and detailed observations about a child, their likes, dislikes, daily routines, and family situations. All were children who had attended Sunshine Daycare during Alina's tenure there. We compared the names to missing persons reports, Detective Harmon explained. None of the children were reported missing. We contacted many of them, now adults. All were alive and well, with normal memories of their childhoods. But interspersed among these ordinary entries were pages written in a different hand, harsh, angular writing that slanted sharply across the page. These entries were addressed to someone named Ellie and contained disturbing threats and commands. Ellie must watch, Ellie must record, Ellie must remember what happens to children who tell. The walls keep secrets, the toys remember. Don't make me show you again, Ellie. Psychological experts consulted by the police suggested these entries might indicate that Alina suffered from dissociative identity disorder, with at least one alternate personality that was threatening or controlling her primary identity. The investigation expanded to include a careful examination of the stuffed animals themselves. Inside 27 of them, forensic technicians found small objects: a child's hair ribbon, a tiny plastic bracelet, a hand-drawn birthday card, small toys. All appeared to be innocuous items a child might give to a beloved caretaker. Inside one bear, however, they found a thumb drive. The files it contained were corrupted beyond recovery, except for one folder labeled "The Others." Inside was a single document containing just 5 names and dates spanning from 1983 to 1997. None of the names matched children from the daycare. When cross-referenced with national databases, 3 of the 5 names matched missing persons cases from neighboring states, young women who had disappeared without trace. One had last been seen at a bus station in Rochester, Minnesota, just 30 miles from Northfield. Another had been a student at a college in Wisconsin, reported missing during a weekend trip. The third had been a drifter with no fixed address, reported missing by a concerned shelter worker. The remaining 2 names yielded no matches in any database. Detective Harmon ordered ground-penetrating radar scans of Alina's property, particularly focusing on the garden she had tended so carefully. The results showed no evidence of human remains or disturbed soil patterns consistent with burial. The investigation faced a fundamental challenge. Its subject was deceased. Alina Winters had taken whatever secrets she possessed to her grave. The woman in the photograph remained unidentified. The significance of the dates and names on the thumb drive remained unclear. "We have theories," Detective Harmon admitted in her final report, "but insufficient evidence to draw definitive conclusions." The most prevalent theory suggests that Alina may have suffered abuse in her childhood that led to her dissociative condition. One personality, the Ellie addressed in the notebooks, was the primary identity, the quiet daycare worker who genuinely cared for children. The other personality may have been responsible for darker actions, possibly including the disappearances of the women named on the thumb drive. The stuffed animals in the walls may have served as both trophies and repositories for memories too difficult for Alina's primary personality to process. The cash withdrawals could have funded payments to victims or accomplices, or perhaps supported Alina's alternate lifestyle during dissociative episodes. Yet hard evidence remained elusive. No DNA from missing persons was found in the home. No confession existed. No witnesses came forward with accounts of Alina behaving violently or erratically. The house on Maple Street was eventually demolished, the property remaining vacant to this day. The stuffed animals were cataloged as evidence and stored in the Northfield Police Department's evidence locker, where they remain faded sentinels of secrets that may never be fully revealed. Sarah Donahue, the neighbor who had known Alina for 15 years, still keeps one stuffed animal, a small teddy bear Alina had given her daughter on her 8th birthday. She keeps it locked in a box in her attic. "I can't bring myself to throw it away," she explained, "but I also can't look at it without wondering what was really inside Alina Winters, what was inside the walls of that house, and most importantly, are there still secrets out there waiting to be found?" The case of Alina Winters and the stuffed animals in her walls officially remains open but inactive. Detective Harmon, now retired, still visits the empty lot on Maple Street occasionally, standing silently at the edge of what was once Alina's garden. "Some cases don't give you answers," she says quietly. "They just leave you with better questions." And somewhere, perhaps in an evidence locker gathering dust, a faded blue rabbit with a stitched smile holds the truth about the crying woman in the photograph. A truth trapped inside worn fabric walls, just as it had been trapped inside the walls of 418 Maple Street. Crime 7, too soft. When they pulled up the carpet, they found layers of foam and cloth padding something buried. A trap door led to a shallow cavity where someone had written on every surface, "Too loud, too loud, too loud." At the center, a pair of headphones melted to the floor. The house at 1487 Sycamore Lane in Easton, Pennsylvania, had stood for nearly a century. Built in 1928, the modest two-story colonial had changed hands 17 times before the Petersons purchased it in March of 2018. Daniel and Emma Peterson, along with their teenage son Noah, had moved from Cincinnati for Daniel's new position at Lehigh Valley Hospital. They were drawn to the house for its character, the mature oak trees in the yard, and the price point that seemed almost too good to be true. Emma had commented on the mustiness in the main bedroom closet during their first walkthrough. The real estate agent had assured them it was nothing that couldn't be fixed with a deep clean and some fresh paint. The Petersons signed the papers 2 weeks later. Noah Peterson was 17 when they moved in, a quiet boy with an intense interest in audio engineering. He spent most of his time with headphones on, mixing music tracks or recording ambient sounds for what he called his audio journal. His parents worried about his isolation, but chalked it up to the difficulty of moving during his junior year of high school. 3 months after moving in, Noah began complaining about sounds in the house. At first, it was just comments about the creaking floors or the rattle of the heating vents. Then he mentioned whispers. His parents assumed it was the unfamiliar settling noises of an old house, amplified by a teenager's imagination and the stress of adjusting to a new environment. By August, Noah had moved his bedroom from the sunny front room to the smaller room at the back of the house, claiming it had better acoustics and less interference. He installed acoustic foam panels on the walls and kept his door closed most of the time. His grades, which had been exceptional in Cincinnati, began to slip. He would sit in that room for hours with these expensive recording devices he'd bought online, Daniel Peterson later told Detective Sarah Michaels. Emma wanted to talk to someone about it, maybe get him some help, but I thought he was just going through a phase. I wish I'd listened to her. In September, the family next door, the Thompsons, reported hearing arguments from the Peterson home, raised voices, the sound of objects being thrown. When questioned later, both Daniel and Emma denied any significant conflicts. Noah was frustrated sometimes, Emma admitted. He kept saying we didn't understand what he was dealing with. On October 12, 2018, 7 months after moving into the house on Sycamore Lane, Noah Peterson missed dinner. Emma knocked on his door at 6:30 p.m., then again at 7:15. At 8:00, concerned by the lack of response, Daniel used a screwdriver to open the locked door. The room was empty. Noah's laptop was open on his desk, a music mixing program still running. His phone lay beside it. His wallet, containing his ID and debit card, sat undisturbed in the top drawer. The Petersons called the police at 8:17 p.m. Officer James Rodriguez was first on the scene. He noted nothing immediately suspicious about the room or the house. Noah's car, a used Honda Civic his parents had given him for his 17th birthday, was still parked in the driveway. None of his clothes appeared to be missing. There were no signs of forced entry or struggle. It looked like the kid had just stepped out, Rodriguez wrote in his initial report. But with no phone, no wallet, no car, where would he go? The first 48 hours of the investigation yielded little. Noah's friends, the few he had made at Easton High, reported no unusual behavior. His teachers described him as intelligent but withdrawn. His digital footprint showed nothing alarming. No concerning search history, no suspicious communications, no evidence of drug use or suicidal ideation. The breakthrough came 3 days later when Emma Peterson was sorting through Noah's room, hoping to find some clue to his whereabouts. She noticed something odd about the closet floor. It felt different, she told Detective Michaels. Softer in some places than others, and there was that smell we'd noticed when we first moved in. I thought maybe there was mold under the carpet. Emma pulled back the corner of the carpet, expecting to find rotted floorboards. Instead, she found layers of foam padding, similar to the acoustic panels Noah had installed on his walls, but older, dirtier. She called her husband, and together they peeled back more of the carpet. Beneath the layers of padding was a crude trapdoor, cut roughly into the original hardwood floor. It was secured with a simple hook and eye latch. When Daniel lifted the trapdoor, they found a shallow space, no more than 2 feet deep, just large enough for a person to lie flat. Every surface, the walls, the ceiling, the floor, was covered in handwritten text. Too loud, too loud, too loud, repeated hundreds of times in varying sizes. In the center of this bizarre space lay a pair of headphones, partially melted to the floor, as if subjected to intense heat. Beside them was a small digital recorder. The Petersons immediately called the police. Detective Sarah Michaels arrived with a forensic team at 9:45 p.m. on October 15th. They documented the hidden space and carefully removed the recorder. The device still contained a functioning memory card. The audio file recovered from the recorder contained 76 minutes of what appeared to be silence, punctuated by occasional static. When enhanced in the forensic lab, technicians identified what they described as ambient household noises and indistinct vocalizations that were too degraded to interpret clearly. More disturbing was what they found beneath the headphones. When carefully lifted by forensic technicians, the melted plastic had adhered to a small patch of dried blood on the wooden surface below. DNA testing confirmed it was Noah's blood. Further examination of the space revealed that it wasn't a recent addition to the house. The cut in the floorboards showed signs of aging consistent with having been made decades earlier. The writing on the walls appeared to be in at least 3 different handwriting styles, suggesting multiple people had used this space over time. The investigation expanded to include previous owners of the house. Records showed that in 1972, another teenager had lived there, 16-year-old Michael Kemp, who had been reported missing in November of that year. His case had never been solved. In 1994, the house had been rented by a graduate student named Alicia Brennan, who had abruptly abandoned her studies at Lafayette College. Her roommate at the time reported that Alicia had become obsessed with recording sounds in the house before her disappearance. As police dug deeper, they discovered building permits from 1969 showing that significant renovations had been done to the house, including the installation of an unusual sound system throughout the walls. The contractor who had performed the work was long deceased, and the purpose of the system remained unclear. Noah Peterson remained missing. Searches of the surrounding area, including the nearby Lehigh River, turned up nothing. His bank account remained untouched. His social media accounts showed no activity since his disappearance. 6 months after Noah vanished, Emma Peterson was sorting through his computer files when she discovered an audio folder labeled simply House. Inside were dozens of recordings, each meticulously dated and time-stamped. Most contained nothing but the normal sounds of a household, footsteps, running water, the hum of appliances. But the final recording, made the day before Noah disappeared, was different. The 18-minute file began with Noah's voice speaking softly. "I finally figured it out. The house doesn't just record sounds, it plays them back, but not right away. It waits, sometimes years. I've been hearing them, snippets of conversations from people who lived here before, arguments, crying, sometimes screaming. But there's something else too, something underneath all of it." The recording continued with 3 minutes of silence, then what sounded like Noah moving around his room. Then his voice again, more urgent. "It's getting louder. I think it knows I can hear it now." The remainder of the recording captured what forensic audio analysts could only describe as acoustic anomalies, sounds that didn't match any known sound pattern in their database. In July 2019, 9 months after Noah's disappearance, Daniel and Emma Peterson sold the house at 1487 Sycamore Lane and moved back to Cincinnati. The case remained open but inactive, with no new leads. The house stood empty for nearly a year before being purchased by a real estate developer who planned to renovate and flip the property. During demolition of the main bedroom closet, workers discovered something behind the wall, a space roughly the size of a coffin, lined with the same acoustic foam found in the closet floor. Inside was a collection of recording devices spanning several decades, reel-to-reel tapes from the 1960s, cassettes from the 1980s, digital recorders similar to Noah's. All had been carefully arranged in chronological order. There was no sign of Noah Peterson. No body was ever found. The blood beneath the headphones remained the only physical evidence of what might have happened to him. The house at 1487 Sycamore Lane was ultimately demolished in 2021. The lot remains empty, though local teens sometimes dare each other to spend the night there, claiming they can hear whispers coming from the ground. Detective Michaels, who has since retired from the Easton Police Department, keeps a copy of Noah's final recording on her personal computer. She listens to it occasionally, hoping to catch something she missed before. There's a moment near the end, she told a local reporter on the 5th anniversary of Noah's disappearance, where it sounds like he's trying to say something important. But then there's this other sound that drowns him out. I still can't tell if it's coming toward him or if he's moving toward it. The case of Noah Peterson remains unsolved. Crime 8, it wasn't listed in the blueprints. When opened, it revealed a narrow shaft filled with hundreds of paper cranes strung on fishing line. At the very top, a small mirror, and behind it, another eye-level hatch bolted shut from the other side. The house on Larkspur Lane had stood for nearly 70 years before Meredith Holloway purchased it in October of 2018. A divorced nurse practitioner from Sacramento, Meredith had saved for 15 years to afford the charming 3-bedroom craftsman in the quiet town of Maplewood, Oregon. Population 8,462. Average rainfall 62 inches per year. Average violent crime rate well below the national average. Meredith had always been methodical. Her colleagues at Sacramento Memorial described her as quietly competent, the kind of person who maintained detailed spreadsheets tracking her retirement accounts and kept her spice rack alphabetized. She'd visited Maplewood 5 times before making an offer on the house, taking photographs of every room, measuring each doorway, and even testing the water pressure at different times of day. "I'm a planner," she told her sister Diana during one of their Sunday phone calls. "I don't like surprises." The previous owners, an elderly couple named Harold and June Whitaker, had lived in the house for 42 years before moving to Arizona to be closer to their grandchildren. The home inspection had revealed minor issues, some dated wiring, a slightly sagging porch step, but nothing that concerned Meredith enough to reconsider. The attic was small but finished, with pine flooring and a dormer window that faced east. Meredith planned to use it as a reading room. Her first 3 months in Maplewood passed uneventfully. She introduced herself to her neighbors, joined a book club at the local library, and began volunteering at the community hospital on weekends. In January, she started renovating the attic space, hiring local contractor Thomas Reed to install built-in bookshelves and improve the insulation. It was Thomas who first noticed something unusual about the attic ceiling. "Something's off with these measurements," he told Meredith one Tuesday afternoon. "According to the blueprints, there should be another 3 feet of height in the center." They both stood in the middle of the attic, necks craned upward at the sloped ceiling. Thomas ran his knuckles along the plasterboard, listening for hollow spaces. Near the apex, his knock produced a distinctly different sound. "There's something here," he said, pulling a small utility knife from his tool belt. "Mind if I cut a small hole to check?" Meredith hesitated. The inspection didn't mention anything unusual. "Inspectors don't typically check for hidden spaces unless there's a reason to," Thomas explained. But this ceiling was definitely added after the original construction. With Meredith's reluctant permission, Thomas carefully cut a small square in the plasterboard. When he pushed the section upward, it moved freely, revealing darkness beyond. He shined his flashlight through the opening. "Well, I'll be damned," he whispered. "There's a hatch here, and it's not on any blueprint I've seen." After widening the hole, they discovered a wooden hatch, approximately 2 feet square, built into what should have been empty roof space. The hatch was not locked, merely secured with a simple sliding bolt. Thomas carefully slid it open. What they found defied immediate explanation. The hatch opened into a narrow vertical shaft, about 2 feet wide and extending upward an estimated 8 feet. Hanging from the sides of the shaft were hundreds of origami cranes suspended on nearly invisible fishing line. They varied in size and color, some made from newspaper, others from what appeared to be pages torn from books, still others from colorful patterned paper. In the beam of Thomas's flashlight, they cast eerie, dancing shadows on the walls of the shaft. "What the hell?" Meredith breathed. Thomas aimed his flashlight upward. "There's something at the top, looks like a mirror." Indeed, fixed to the top of the shaft was a small round mirror, tilted at an angle that would allow someone looking up from below to see what appeared to be another hatch, this one bolted from the other side. Meredith called the Whittakers that evening. June answered the phone with her customary cheerfulness, but when Meredith described what they'd found, the line went silent. "June, are you still there?" "Yes, dear." June's voice had lost its warmth. "Harold and we never went into the attic much. It was already finished when we bought the house in '76. The previous owner, Mr. Danning, he told us there was nothing up there worth looking at." "Did you ever notice anything strange? Noises in the ceiling? Anything at all?" "No, nothing like that." June paused. Though Harold did mention once, maybe 10 years ago, that he thought he heard paper rustling in the walls, we assumed it was mice. After hanging up, Meredith called the county records office. The clerk informed her that before the Whittakers, the house had been owned by Elliot Danning, a widower who had purchased it in 1968. Before that, the property records were spotty, a gap in the database that the clerk attributed to a courthouse fire in the early '60s. Thomas recommended calling the police, but Meredith hesitated. "What would I tell them? That I found paper birds in my ceiling? They'd think I was wasting their time." Instead, she asked Thomas to enlarge the opening so they could investigate further. He was reluctant, but eventually agreed, returning the next day with a ladder tall enough to reach the top of the shaft. The paper cranes, upon closer inspection, were not all made from random materials. Many contained fragments of handwritten letters, diary entries, and what appeared to be medical notes. One crane, unfolded carefully by Meredith, contained a partial letter that read, "Cannot continue this way. If anyone discovers what we've been, the rest had been cut off." When Thomas climbed the ladder and examined the mirror at the top, he discovered it was mounted on a thin piece of plywood that could be pushed aside. Behind it was, as they had glimpsed from below, another hatch, this one secured with 3 heavy bolts from the opposite side. "This doesn't make any sense," Thomas said, descending the ladder. "According to the blueprints, there's nothing above this space except the roof. There shouldn't be another room up there, and there's no access to it from anywhere in the house." Meredith spent that night in a local motel, unable to sleep under the knowledge of what lay hidden in her ceiling. The next morning, she contacted a structural engineer who arrived that afternoon with ground-penetrating radar equipment. The engineer's findings were baffling. Beyond the bolted hatch appeared to be a small room, approximately 8 feet square. It had no other entrance or exit, no door connecting it to any other part of the house, no window to the outside world. It was, for all intents and purposes, a sealed chamber within the roof structure. Detective Sarah Liang arrived at 4:30 p.m. that same day, accompanied by a forensic technician. After examining the shaft and the paper cranes, she made a call to the station, requesting permission to breach the upper hatch. "We need to be prepared for what we might find," she told Meredith quietly. "Hidden spaces like this, they're rarely innocent." At 6:18 p.m., with Meredith waiting nervously in her kitchen, the police cut through the bolts and opened the upper hatch. What they discovered would subsequently occupy 3 columns on the front page of the Maplewood Gazette and become the subject of a 48 Hours special 6 months later. The sealed room contained a single chair facing the hatch, a small desk with a journal, and hundreds more paper cranes hanging from the ceiling. The walls were covered with photographs of the house specifically, photographs taken through windows from outside, spanning decades based on the changing styles and quality of the images. Many showed the Whittakers going about their daily lives, unaware they were being observed. Others showed previous residents, including several of a young woman who, based on her clothing and hairstyle, appeared to have lived in the house in the 1960s. The journal belonged to someone named E, who described in meticulous detail watching the house's occupants over a 30-year period. The writer claimed to have constructed the hidden room in 1969, shortly after purchasing the property, and had apparently accessed it via a system of ladders placed against the exterior of the house during the occupants' absences. The final entry, dated September 12, 2017, read simply, "They're selling. I must prepare for new eyes." Elliot Danning, the owner before the Whittakers, had allegedly died in 2017 at age 88 in a nursing home in Portland. Detective Liang immediately contacted the facility, only to discover that while Danning had indeed been a resident there, he had never been visited by family or friends during his 3-year stay. More disturbingly, when shown a resident photograph, the nursing staff identified the man they had known as Elliot Danning as someone entirely different from the Elliot Danning who had owned Meredith's house. The real Elliot Danning's whereabouts remained unknown. His social security number had continued to be used for property tax payments until 2017, but there was no death certificate, no record of hospitalization, no trace of his existence after 1969, the year the hidden room was supposedly constructed. In the months that followed, forensic analysis of the paper cranes revealed fragments of documents spanning 5 decades. Some contained pieces of medical records belonging to Danning himself, describing treatment for acute paraphrenia and voyeuristic disorder. Others contained snippets of observations about the house's occupants, including detailed descriptions of private moments the Whittakers couldn't have known were being witnessed. The photographs in the hidden room showed no indication of forced entry or harm to any residents. It appeared that E had been content merely to watch, to record, to fold paper cranes from the fragments of other people's lives, suspended in a space that officially didn't exist. Meredith Holloway never spent another night in the house on Larkspur Lane. She sold it at a significant loss 3 months later to a real estate developer who demolished the structure and built 2 smaller homes on the lot. The fate of Elliot Danning remains unresolved. Some investigators believe he lived secretly in the hidden room for years, somehow entering and exiting without detection. Others suggest he might have maintained a separate residence elsewhere, visiting the hidden room periodically to update his journal and craft his paper cranes. The most disturbing theory proposed by Detective Liang in her final report was that Danning never left the house at all. Ground-penetrating radar scans of the property, conducted after Meredith vacated, revealed several anomalous spaces within the foundation that were never fully explained. To this day, residents of Maplewood occasionally report finding paper cranes in unexpected places tucked into library books, perched on fence posts, or left on windowsills. Most are made from ordinary paper, but a few, when carefully unfolded, reveal fragments of handwritten text in faded ink. I am still watching. Crime 9, under blacklight, the headboard lit up with scratches, long, repeated lines and strange symbols, all centered around a crude drawing of a figure with no eyes. On the pillowcase, written in faded marker, "She sleeps beneath us." The bedroom belonged to 17-year-old Meredith Calloway, a high school senior from the small riverside town of Millbrook, Connecticut. Her room, like most teenage girls', was a testament to her identity. Photographs of friends pinned to a corkboard, academic awards displayed proudly beside concert tickets, and a collection of vintage cameras her grandfather had given her before his passing. Meredith was what adults called an old soul. She volunteered at the local library on weekends, maintained a 4 GPA, and had already been accepted to Wesleyan University with a partial scholarship. Her friends described her as thoughtful, sometimes distant, but always reliable. Her mother, Eleanor, a widow who worked as a nurse at Millbrook General, often bragged about how she never had to worry about Meredith. "Some kids need constant supervision," she'd tell her colleagues. Meredith practically raised herself after Tom died. Tom Calloway had passed away from pancreatic cancer when Meredith was 9. The loss had transformed the once outgoing child into someone more reserved, more careful. Yet those who knew her well said she carried her grief with remarkable grace. And then on April 12, 2023, Meredith didn't come down for breakfast. Eleanor assumed her daughter had left early for school, perhaps for a study group or to finish a project. But when the school called at 10:23 a.m. to report Meredith's absence, a cold dread settled in Eleanor's stomach. She called Meredith's cell phone. No answer. She texted. No response. She called Meredith's closest friend, Amber. Nothing unusual had happened the day before. Eleanor left work early and drove home, her knuckles white against the steering wheel. She climbed the stairs to Meredith's bedroom, noticing how the door was closed. Meredith always left it open when she wasn't home. Eleanor knocked, then pushed the door open. The bed was made perfectly neat, too neat even for Meredith. The window was closed and locked from the inside. Meredith's backpack sat at her desk, packed with books for classes she never attended that day. Her phone charger was still plugged in, but her phone was gone. So was Meredith. The local police didn't consider Meredith a priority case at first. Teenagers run away. They rebel. They need space. Detective Marcus Hayes, a 30-year veteran of the force with tired eyes and a skeptical demeanor, interviewed Eleanor in her living room while younger officers searched Meredith's room. "Has she ever done anything like this before?" Hayes asked, his pen hovering over his notepad. "Never," Eleanor whispered. "She wouldn't worry me like this, not Meredith." Hayes nodded, unconvinced. Any problems at school, boyfriend troubles, drug use? Eleanor shook her head at each suggestion. Meredith didn't date. She was focused on college, on her future. She barely went to parties. It was Officer Tamara Reed who first noticed something strange in Meredith's bedroom. A young officer just 3 years out of the academy, Reed had been assigned to photograph the room. Standard procedure, but something about the bed bothered her. It was two perfect hospital corners, pillows arranged symmetrically. Reed had been a resident advisor in college. She knew how teenagers made beds. This wasn't it. "Detective Hayes," she called. "You might want to see this." Reed had brought a blacklight, standard for detecting bodily fluids at potential crime scenes. But what illuminated on Meredith's headboard wasn't what anyone expected. Scratches, dozens of them. Some appeared to be letters in no recognizable alphabet. Others formed patterns that almost resembled stick figures or crude maps, and centering it all, a figure without eyes. Below it, barely visible on the white pillowcase, "She sleeps beneath us." The investigation changed course immediately. Crime scene technicians were called. The house was cordoned off. Eleanor was moved to a hotel while investigators tore through the Calloway home. They removed floorboards beneath the bed. They examined the walls with thermal cameras. Ground-penetrating radar was brought in to scan the foundation of the house. They found nothing beneath the bed, nothing in the walls, nothing in the foundation. But they did find something else. When they removed Meredith's mattress, there was a small journal wedged between the box spring and the frame. Its pages contained Meredith's neat handwriting, documenting what appeared to be dreams or perhaps something else. March 3, the scratching started again last night. It's coming from inside the headboard, I think. Mom can't hear it. I tried recording it, but nothing shows up on the audio. March 10, I saw her today, standing at the foot of my bed when I woke up at 3:17 a.m. She doesn't have eyes, but somehow I know she was looking at me. When I turned on the light, she was gone. March 15, the scratching is getting louder. I think she's trying to write something. I'm going to try to communicate tonight. March 20, she told me her name. I can't write it here. Names have power, but she was here before us. This was her home. She wants it back. April 11, she says there's a door. She's going to show me. I'm not afraid anymore. The final entry was dated the day before Meredith disappeared. The investigators found no evidence of forced entry. All doors and windows had been locked from the inside. Meredith's winter coat still hung in the closet, even though April nights in Connecticut remained cold. Her wallet, containing $43 and her ID, sat on her desk. Security cameras from neighboring houses showed no one entering or leaving the Calloway home that night. Detective Hayes interviewed Meredith's friends, teachers, and acquaintances. Most expressed shock. A few mentioned subtle changes in Meredith's behavior over the previous month. She seemed more tired, occasionally distracted. Her English teacher noted that Meredith's most recent essay discussed liminal spaces and the concept of thresholds in folklore, but nothing that suggested she planned to leave. Amber Miller, Meredith's closest friend, provided the most disturbing account. About 2 weeks ago, Meredith asked me if I ever heard scratching in my walls at night, she told Hayes. She said she'd been having these dreams about a woman with no eyes who lived underneath her bed. I told her it was just stress about college. She seemed to agree, but then... Amber hesitated, twisting a friendship bracelet on her wrist, one matching a bracelet Meredith wore. "Then what?" Hayes prompted. Then she showed me her headboard. She had this little UV flashlight her dad had given her years ago. She turned off the lights and shined it on the wood. There were these scratches. She said they weren't there before, that they appeared overnight. I thought maybe she was doing it herself in her sleep or something, but she seemed really freaked out. 3 weeks into the investigation, they found Meredith's phone. It was inside her own desk drawer, shut off, the battery dead. When they charged it and accessed her search history, they discovered dozens of searches about local history, house foundations, and something called threshold spaces. The most frequent searches involved the history of the land where the Calloway house now stood. Before the subdivision was built in the 1970s, the area had been farmland belonging to the Walker family. According to town records in 1894, the eldest Walker daughter, Abigail, had gone missing. Her body was never found, but rumors persisted that she had been buried somewhere on the property by her own father after she threatened to expose some family secret. Alina couldn't bear to stay in the house after Meredith's disappearance. She put it on the market, priced well below value. A young couple, the Reeves, purchased it, excited about their first home despite the whispers around town about the missing girl. 3 months after moving in, Sarah Reeves was preparing the spare bedroom, Meredith's old room, for use as a home office when she discovered something odd. While removing the baseboards to install new electrical outlets, she found a small opening in the wall that shouldn't have been there. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. It contained a crude map of what appeared to be the house's foundation, with an X marked in what would be directly below Meredith's bed. Written in faded ink at the bottom, "She waits where the house meets the earth." The Reeves contacted Detective Hayes, who obtained a warrant to excavate beneath the house. County records showed no pipes or electrical conduits in that area, just solid foundation and earth. When they broke through the concrete, they found a small cavity that should not have existed, a space just large enough for a person to squeeze through. Inside, they discovered a much older foundation, remnants of a structure that predated the Walker farmhouse. Among the stones was a leather pouch containing a girl's hairbrush, the bristles still holding strands of brown hair, and a daguerreotype of a young woman with severe features, dated 1891. Written on the back, "Abigail Walker, may she find peace." But they never found Meredith. Alina Calloway moved to Oregon to live with her sister. She doesn't talk about Meredith anymore, not about her disappearance, at least. She talks about her daughter's childhood, her ambitions, the way she used to read books upside down when she was 5 because she liked seeing the words differently. Detective Hayes retired 6 months after the case went cold. In his personal files, colleagues found a UV photograph of Meredith's headboard. He had circled certain patterns in the scratches, patterns that, when connected, formed what looked like a doorway. The Reeves family still lives in the house. They've remodeled extensively, removing walls, replacing floors. They've never experienced anything unusual. Their toddler daughter sometimes waves at empty corners and talks about the quiet lady, but children have active imaginations. Last winter, Sarah Reeves was sorting through some old moving boxes in the attic when she found something that made her breath catch, a faded photograph that must have been missed during the investigation. It showed Meredith Calloway standing in her bedroom, smiling at the camera. Behind her, barely visible in the mirror's reflection, was the silhouette of someone else, someone whose features were indistinct except for the absence where eyes should have been. Sarah turned the photo over. On the back, in handwriting not matching Meredith's from the case files, were the words, "Some doors only open from the other side." She put the photo back in the box and closed the attic door behind her. Some things, Sarah decided, are better left undisturbed. To this day, Meredith Calloway remains listed as a missing person. Her case is reviewed annually, but no new evidence has emerged. Alina still sends birthday cards to her daughter's last known address, now occupied by the Reeves family. They collect them in a drawer, unsure what else to do. The bed with the scratched headboard was donated to a thrift store and purchased by a college student for her off-campus apartment. She reported no unusual experiences, though her roommates noted she began keeping the lights on while sleeping and eventually moved back to the dormitories before the semester ended. In Millbrook, locals still talk about the Calloway case in hushed tones. Some say Meredith ran away to escape the suffocating smallness of their town. Others suggest more sinister scenarios involving secret boyfriends or undiagnosed mental illness. But sometimes, when the conversation turns to the scratches on the headboard and the message about someone sleeping beneath, the room grows quiet. Because everyone in Millbrook knows that the ground their houses stand on holds more history than any of them can truly comprehend. And some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again. Story 10, the aged envelope sat in the detective's hands, its worn edges tinged with yellow, yet the stamp bore the freshness of recent mailing. With cautious precision, Detective Sarah Morgan unfolded its contents, a lone sheet of paper, bearing a message typed in a hurried, uneven script. "I am sorry for what I did," the words whispered from the page. A faint dampness clung to the paper, carrying with it a metallic scent that lingered in the air. A striking discovery awaited as their eyes traced a reddish smear along the bottom edge, a stain that was unmistakably not of ink. Carefully preserving the evidence, Detective Morgan sealed the letter in an evidence bag, her gloved hands moving with practiced expertise. The forensics team's analysis confirmed her suspicions. The crimson stain was human blood, its DNA linking back to an unsolved homicide case that had plagued the department for years. The victim, a bright young journalist named Rebecca Warren, was tragically discovered in her apartment, bearing the cruel marks of multiple stab wounds. Her laptop missing, her notes strewn across the floor, hinting at a connection between the attack and an unfinished story. Despite tireless efforts, the case had grown cold until the unexpected arrival of this cryptic letter addressed simply to the Homicide Division. Fingerprints were scarce on the paper and envelope, only faint smudges hinting at gloved hands. A faint glimmer of hope emerged with the postmark, offering a fresh light after months of stagnation. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Detective Morgan pinned the letter at the heart of a board adorned with images of crime scenes, timelines, and elusive suspects. "This changes everything," she declared to the room, her voice a calming presence amidst the tension. "Our perpetrator shows signs of remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner in this ongoing investigation, scrutinized the letter thoughtfully. "Or perhaps it's a charade, a ploy to deceive us," he proposed. The forensics team's discovery of the typewriter's unique imprint patterns led them to a model long out of production, a rare find, but not beyond reach. They embarked on a quest, reaching out to antique aficionados across the region in pursuit of this elusive lead. As the inquiry gained momentum, they delved deeper into Rebecca's life, uncovering her relentless pursuit of truth and justice. Her investigation into a prominent family embroiled in local politics had unearthed secrets best left buried. The shadow of suspicion fell on her boyfriend, Michael Barnes, whose demeanor shifted subtly upon the emergence of the incriminating letter. A second missive arrived, echoing the first in its ominous tone. The confession within hinted at a dark truth. Rebecca's knowledge had posed a threat to the family's secrets, ultimately leading to her tragic demise. The trail of clues wound its way to the opulent mansion of the deceased patriarch, where interviews with the eldest son, Richard, unveiled a chilling collection of antique typewriters. Suspicion crystallized when microscopic fibers on the envelopes linked back to custom, stationery exclusive to the family's youngest daughter, Eleanor. Her revelation of Richard's request to borrow the stationery weeks prior raised red flags. A search of Richard's abode unearthed a hidden chamber, brimming with incriminating evidence: a vintage typewriter, blood-stained letters, and a chilling connection to Rebecca's murder. The intricate web of deceit unfurled further as financial records exposed a clandestine alliance between Richard and Michael, shedding light on a sinister conspiracy. Confronted with the weight of his guilt, Michael confessed to unwittingly setting a tragic chain of events in motion, driven by his fear and misplaced trust. A pivotal moment arrived with Aliner's disclosure of a damning recording, capturing Richard's sinister resolve to silence Rebecca permanently. In a dramatic turn, Richard's facade crumbled as he attempted to flee, only to be apprehended by the long arm of justice. The courtroom saga unfolded, painting a portrait of greed, betrayal, and the irrevocable consequences of one fateful decision. As the gavel fell, sealing Richard's fate, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents with a silent gesture of solace. Though justice could not heal their wounds, the resolution offered a semblance of peace. The blood-stained letters now lay dormant in evidence storage, a poignant reminder that even the most meticulously orchestrated crimes leave behind indelible traces, and that the shadow of remorse, whether genuine or feigned, can unravel the most elaborate of schemes. Rebecca Warren's case endured as a cautionary tale in the annals of detective lore, a testament to the enduring power of intuition and the profound weight of guilt that can tip the scales of justice. Story 11: The Enigmatic Manor. New homeowners perceived it as a mere peculiarity, the crackling of the old intercom system late at night. A relic from a bygone era, reconfigured but left to gather dust in obscurity. However, one fateful night, curiosity gripped the husband, prompting him to press the button. A whisper emanated through the aged speaker, sending shivers down his spine. "Why did you come back?" Startled, he recoiled, his hands trembling. Standing behind him, his wife uttered softly, "I never said that." The Victorian manor stood serenely amidst ancient oak trees, its weathered facade concealing a modernized interior. Daniel and Meredith Parker, drawn to history, had acquired the property at an unexpectedly reasonable price, despite the unease of the real estate agent during the showing. The vintage intercom system, interlinking all rooms, had captivated the Parkers with its nostalgic charm. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the property, the gravel murmuring beneath her unmarked vehicle's tires. Initially reported as a possible break-in, the dispatcher's tone hinted at a deeper enigma. Daniel Parker, a tall figure with a pallid complexion, greeted Detective Reeves at the entrance, leading her through the grand foyer. "It all began with the intercom," he recounted, his voice laden with unease. First static, then whispers, eventually coherent sentences. "My wife doubted me until she heard it too." In the living room, Meredith sat rigid on an antique sofa, her grip tight on a steaming mug left untouched. Without preamble, she divulged, "We uncovered something hidden behind the wall." Daniel was expanding the kitchen pantry, and behind the drywall her voice faltered. Concealed within the wall, encased in deteriorating plastic, lay a small leather-bound journal. Detective Reeves cautiously flipped through its fragile pages, revealing the elegant yet frenzied script of Aliner, the previous owner. Aliner's entries hinted at her growing apprehension towards her husband Vincent's malevolent intentions. "The last entry dates back 30 years, Daniel elucidated. After that, silence. The former owners mentioned acquiring the property from an elderly man who relocated to a retirement community. Investigative efforts unveiled the dark past of Vincent and Aliner Blackwood, the erstwhile owners of the house. Records indicated Vincent sold the house following Aliner's purported departure, devoid of any divorce filings or financial activities in Aliner's name post her final journal entry. A thorough examination of the property unearthed anomalies beneath the garden shed's concrete foundation, confirmed by ground-penetrating radar. As the investigators breached the aged concrete, The truth materialized a skeleton of a woman in her 40s, bearing signs of blunt force trauma to the skull. Among the remains gleamed a gold wedding band inscribed, "To Alina, my eternal love." The evidence mounted against Vincent Blackwood swiftly. Now aged and residing in a care facility, Vincent comprehended the gravity of the charges. His chilling response to the evidence sent a shiver down Detective Reeves' spine. "She wouldn't cease her prattle," Vincent uttered with an eerie calm. "Through that cursed intercom, incessantly checking on me, interrogating me. I disconnected it, but she reinstated it, claiming she desired constant contact regardless of my location in the house." His vacant gaze met theirs. "I merely sought solitude." In his confession, Vincent unveiled his meticulously crafted deception of Alina's abandonment, even forging postcards from her alleged locations to neighbors. For years, he dwelt in the house, walking daily over the concrete concealing his wife's remains. The trial concluded swiftly, with Vincent pleading guilty to the heinous act. The sentencing judge acknowledged the premeditated nature of the crime and the decades-long web of deceit. Daniel and Meredith eventually relinquished the house, unable to endure its ominous history. Before departing, they held a solemn memorial for Alina in the restored garden. The subsequent owners removed the intercom system during renovations, with workers reporting faint static and whispers, attributing them to equipment interference. Before the case file was archived, Detective Reeves revisited the Blackwood investigation. As she sealed the manila folder, she pondered how the house had transcended time to unveil its secret. Justice had finally caught up with Vincent Blackwood, all thanks to Alina's resolute voice echoing through the ages. Local law enforcement dubbed the case the house that answered back. Occasionally, Detective Reeves would pass by the property on her way home. Though she never halted, she would decelerate, window cracked open slightly, attuned to whispers carried upon the wind. Story 12. The aged apartment exuded a sense of history, its walls holding secrets whispered through the years. The heating system let out a weary groan, the pipes rattling in a familiar chorus. It was all part of the building's time-worn charm, or so she assured herself. Until the day she heard it, the voice, a mere whisper yet distinct, weaving through the vents like a ghostly melody. It wasn't the typical background noise of neighbors chatting on the phone. It was a beckoning, calling out her name in hushed tones. Intrigued and unnerved, she leaned in closer, pressing her ear against the vent, her heart echoing in the silence. A breath of icy air brushed past her cheek, followed by a soft, almost playful declaration, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw found herself rooted to the spot in the heart of the empty apartment, her gaze drawn to the rusted vent cover pried open from the wall. The forensics team moved around her with precision, capturing the scene in flashes of light. The missing woman, Alina Reeves, had vanished without a trace for 7 long days, until a foul odor alerted the building manager. What they unearthed within the ventilation system defied logic. She claimed to hear voices through the vents, Officer Patel recited from his notes. The building management dismissed her complaints, blaming it on the old heating system's quirks. Shaw knelt by the vent, tracing the scratch marks etched around its edges. "These marks, they were made out of desperation, not tools," she murmured. The gouges spoke of a frantic attempt, of nails clawing desperately from within. Alina had been a beloved figure, a kindergarten teacher with a nurturing smile and thriving houseplants adorning her windowsill. Her absence was felt keenly by her students, who had crafted cards in her honor. It was her sister who had raised the alarm, reporting her disappearance. She grew paranoid in the days leading up to her vanishing act. Her sister had confided during the interview, her voice quivering with emotion. Alina was convinced she was being watched, spoken to through the vents in her apartment. "I thought it was just work stress taking its toll." Shaw surveyed the apartment anew, noticing the pristine bed, the abandoned coffee mug, and the chair strategically placed beneath the vent, as if an unseen presence had been seated there, listening intently. The forensic findings unveiled chilling revelations. Fibers entangled in the vent matched Alina's favorite cardigan. A foreign fingerprint not belonging to Alina lingered on the inside of the vent cover. Most disturbing were the audio recordings recovered from Alina's phone. Shaw listened in solitude within her car, raindrops creating a soothing cadence on the roof. Alina's voice, tinged with fear, echoed through the speakers, "If you're real, say something." A pregnant silence hung in the air before a faint whisper broke through, barely audible until Shaw cranked up the volume. "Alina, dear Alina, let me in." Delving into the building's past unearthed a troubling narrative. 7 tenants had fled the apartment in the last decade, terminating their leases prematurely. 2 had lodged complaints about mysterious noises within the walls. 1 had even suffered from carbon monoxide poisoning, claiming to hear hallucinatory voices emanating from the vents. The building's superintendent, a man named Harold Weber, had been a fixture for 15 years. Despite a clean personnel record, Shaw couldn't ignore his access to all the units. During interrogation, his demeanor remained composed. "Old buildings make odd sounds," he shrugged. "People get jittery. Nothing supernatural, just creaking pipes and settling foundations." However, when probed about the previous occupants of apartment 4B, a subtle shift in his composure betrayed a hidden unease, a tightening around the eyes, a slight tension in his posture. "I don't keep tabs on everyone who comes and goes," he evasively replied, fixating on a distant point behind Shaw. The investigation took a macabre turn when a concealed access panel was discovered in Alina's bathroom, camouflaged behind a loose tile. It led to a narrow maintenance passage snaking between the walls, granting access to the building's ventilation network. Inside this clandestine space, a cache of items was unearthed: a flashlight, a water bottle, discarded food wrappers, a testament to someone's covert residency within the walls, observing, listening, whispering. Shaw authorized a search of Weber's residence. The apartment exuded an antiseptic aura devoid of personal touches. It was only upon inspecting his computer that the facade crumbled. Folders meticulously organized by apartment numbers unveiled a trove of audio recordings, phone calls, and voyeuristic snapshots of Alina taken through vents and peepholes. A digital diary chronicled his twisted obsession with her. "She senses my presence now," one entry inscribed. "She awaits me. Soon she will join me within the walls." The damning evidence surfaced from a storage unit leased under Weber's name, containing relics pilfered from past tenants, trinkets, photographs, garments preserved as macabre trophies, a shrine to his relationships with the individuals he surveilled. Weber was apprehended while attempting to flee on a nocturnal bus. Surrendering without resistance, he wore a serene smile as the handcuffs snapped shut. "They all succumbed to my whispers eventually," he confided to Shaw during interrogation. "The building speaks through me, reaching out to them." The coroner's report disclosed a harrowing truth: Alina had been alive when she ventured into the ventilation system, likely lured in through the covert passage. Traces of sedatives in her system hinted at manipulation. Lost in the labyrinthine ductwork, her breaths dwindled as she navigated deeper into the building's bowels, enticed by the siren call promising sanctuary. In the aftermath of Weber's arrest, families of former tenants came forward with tales of missing items and loved ones gripped by paranoia, convinced of being under surveillance. A pattern emerged, spanning years: a predator concealed within the walls, selecting victims, manipulating them through whispered illusions. At trial, Weber maintained an eerie calmness, his defense weaving a narrative of delusions symbiotically linked to the building. The prosecution countered with evidence of meticulous scheming. The tampered vents, the hidden passages meticulously maintained, the detailed dossiers chronicling his victims' routines. The jury swiftly rendered their verdict after a brief deliberation guilty on all charges. As Weber was escorted from the courtroom, he cast a chilling smile at Shaw, devoid of warmth. "They will forever heed my whispers," he intoned. "The edifice retains my echoes, the murmurs endure. The once haunted apartment complex now stands deserted. Despite renovations, new proprietors, and fresh coats of paint, occupancy remains transient. Residents report enigmatic noises emanating from the vents, whispers echoing through the walls, and chilling drafts carrying spectral voices. The heating system groans in its age-old lament, the pipes rattling in a melancholic cadence. It's dismissed as routine, a mere quirk of an ancient building, or so they try to convince themselves. Story 13. The worn wooden plank shifted under her weight, drawing her gaze downward. Intrigued, she knelt to inspect the disturbance, feeling the subtle irregularity beneath her fingertips. The floor, once solid and unassuming, now hinted at secrets concealed within its depths. With a delicate touch, she lifted the boards, revealing a hidden passage that slumbered beneath the foundation of her new abode. In the dim light, she discerned the outlines of forgotten furnishings: a mattress, a solitary chair, and nestled in a corner, a weathered notebook adorned with a familiar name repeated throughout its pages her own. Detective Morgan Reed observed silently as Sarah Coleman peered into the shadowy recess below her home, her expression a tapestry woven with fear and disbelief. It wasn't simply the discovery of a hidden chamber that unsettled her, but the violation of her sanctuary by an unseen malevolence. "Refrain from disturbing anything further," Detective Reed's voice, steady and reassuring, cut through the tense silence. She flicked on her flashlight, casting a gentle glow that unveiled a macabre collage adorning the wall's photographs, capturing Sarah's every movement, a chilling testament to an unseen watcher's obsession. Sarah had acquired the quaint cottage from the estate of a reclusive man named Walter Green, a solitary figure who had departed this world without kin. The property had stood vacant for months, its enigmatic past shrouded in silence. The real estate listing had painted a picture of charm and promise, devoid of any mention of the sinister chamber lurking beneath its floorboards. "I never crossed paths with him, the previous owner," Sarah murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "The neighbors spoke of his seclusion. I was told that basement access had been sealed off long ago. That's what the inspection report claimed." As the crime scene investigators descended upon the scene, their tools clunking softly against the wooden flooring, they meticulously documented the eerie tableau, retrieving the mattress, chair, and notebook from their clandestine sanctuary. Forensic analysis unveiled a tapestry of fingerprints belonging solely to Walter Green, a mosaic of obsession woven over years of clandestine surveillance. The revelation that Walter had been meticulously monitoring Sarah for an extended period sent shivers down the spines of the investigative team. He had shadowed her daily routines, blending seamlessly into the backdrop of her life, a ghostly presence she had never perceived. The intensity of his fixation points to a dark escalation, the department psychologist elucidated during a somber briefing. The transition from fantasy to obsession, the hidden chamber a portent of sinister intentions yet unrealized. Detective Reed's inquiry took an unexpected turn when she sought out Walter's former colleague from the local shopping center maintenance crew. The man, visibly perturbed, revealed fragments of Walter's fixation, a semblance of yearning that had festered in silence. "He spoke of her, you know," the colleague confessed, his gaze averted. said she reminded him of someone he once knew. I dismissed it as the ramblings of an old man with a fanciful crush. I never fathomed. His voice trailed off, lost in contemplation. Armed with a warrant, Reed delved into Walter's locker at the shopping center, unearthing a key that beckoned to a storage unit shrouded in mystery. The metallic door groaned open, unveiling a meticulous replica of Sarah's former life, a haunting mirror image of her apartment, meticulously recreated down to the minutest detail. A mannequin adorned with a wig mirroring Sarah's tresses sat frozen at a mock desk, the calendar beside it marked with a foreboding date 1 week following Walter's untimely demise. The word "together" scrawled across the date in crimson ink, a chilling testament to a delusion that had spiraled out of control. The investigation unearthed Walter's troubled past, marred by a history of institutionalization stemming from a fixation on a former teacher. His affliction, classified as erotomania, had lain dormant for decades until Sarah unwittingly reignited his dormant obsession. Spread across the precinct's conference table, crime scene photos painted a haunting portrait of Walter's conviction that he and Sarah were destined for an intertwined fate. His demise was steeped in a belief of shared destiny, Reed mused, her voice tinged with sorrow. In his eyes, they were fated to be as one. Could there have been a chance encounter that sparked this fixation? A fellow detective pondered. Reed shook her head, a silent admission of the inexplicable tendrils that obsession could weave. Sarah, unable to reconcile the horrors lurking beneath her sanctuary, opted to part ways with the cottage that had become a crucible of nightmares. In the echoing emptiness of her former home, she confided in her realtor, grappling with the unspoken terrors that had grazed the edges of her reality. I am haunted by the what-ifs, she confessed softly. If not for that loose floorboard, how long would I have dwelled in blissful ignorance? How close did I skirt the precipice of my own demise, unaware of the malevolence festering beneath my feet? With Walter's demise, the case was officially sealed, catalogued as stalking with intent, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk beneath the veneer of normalcy. Sarah, now a ghost in her own life, relocated far from the shadows of her past, a silent sentinel safeguarding against the encroaching darkness. The cottage found new occupants, oblivious to the specter that had once haunted its halls. The hidden chamber lay dormant, its secrets buried beneath fresh floorboards, a sepulchre of secrets and shadows. Life in its ceaseless march carried on, yet for those privy to the truth, the tale of the room beneath the floor lingered, a whispered warning of the unseen perils that lay in wait, of the monsters who fade into oblivion and the victims who narrowly evade their grasp. Story 14, the mysterious apartment held secrets within its aged walls. Pipes whispered, floorboards murmured. Yet the new tenant sensed an unsettling presence in the familiar sounds. The footsteps, distinct and deliberate, echoed from above, pacing slowly and purposefully. A peculiar occurrence, for she resided on the topmost floor. One fateful night, emboldened by curiosity, she tapped the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased abruptly, plunging the space into an eerie stillness. Then a single knock reverberated back from within the ceiling itself. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the peculiar incident to herself, attributing it to the settling of the building, or perhaps a stray creature seeking refuge in the hidden corners of the attic. Despite the nightly cadence of footsteps overhead, she adapted, seeking solace in heightened television volumes and the sanctuary of headphones to muffle the rhythmic footfalls traversing her ceiling in the shroud of darkness. Detective Morris was drawn into the enigma of the apartment when a maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed crawl space while conducting routine repairs. In a bid to mend a water leak in the hallway outside Sarah's residence, the worker removed a section of drywall, unveiling a narrow passage that defied the building's architectural blueprints. Illuminated by a beam of light, the covert space revealed a makeshift living quarters adorned with remnants of human habitation, a blanket, food wrappers, water bottles, and a weathered notebook. Prompted by the discovery, the building superintendent promptly contacted the authorities. Detective Morris, accompanied by his partner Detective Rivera, arrived at the scene to find the maintenance worker visibly shaken, repeating a chilling refrain. Someone dwelled within the walls, someone observed. The weathered notebook chronicled intricate details of Sarah Coleman's life, her routines, visitors, dining preferences, entertainment choices, bathing times, and sleep patterns. The meticulous handwriting transitioned from order to chaos, interspersed with cryptic symbols in the margins. The final entry lamented, "The subject no longer acknowledges my presence. She defies me. No one defies me." Forensic experts meticulously combed the crawl space, uncovering fingerprints that eluded identification in existing databases. Delving deeper, they unearthed a labyrinthine network of passages intricately woven into the building's structure, some dating back decades according to structural assessments. The passages interconnected 5 distinct apartments, culminating in observation points disguised as innocuous fixtures or minor imperfections, with Sarah Coleman's abode as the focal point. Residents of the present professed ignorance of any anomalies beyond the customary sounds of communal living. Conversely, former occupants recounted unsettling experiences of feeling scrutinized or encountering inexplicable disturbances. 3 predecessors of Sarah's tenancy confessed to a sense of being under surveillance, prompting one to vacate after a mere fortnight. Fearful of ridicule, none had divulged their misgivings. A breakthrough emerged when microscopic blood spatter was discovered in one of the concealed passages, linked through DNA analysis to Martin Weaver, a former occupant who had vanished without a trace 4 years prior. His disappearance had stymied authorities, his family's futile search yielding no closure. Martin had resided directly beneath Sarah's unit, and neighbors recalled his grievances regarding noises emanating from above. Confrontation with the reclusive tenant, Edward, preceded Martin's inexplicable disappearance, marking the onset of a sinister chain of events. Edward, a transient figure with a penchant for solitude, had traversed 6 apartment complexes over 2 decades, consistently favoring top-floor accommodations and evading social entanglements. A disquieting pattern emerged, punctuated by his abrupt departures post-confrontation. An unsettling recollection from a former neighbor depicted Edward as intense, fixated on silence. Investigative efforts unearthed Edward's rural property, unveiling a secluded cabin adorned with a macabre tapestry of surveillance, a collage of residents, architectural schematics, and meticulously documented observations. Central to the tableau were newspaper clippings chronicling the disappearances of 6 individuals, all former denizens of Edward's abodes. Beneath the chilling assemblage lay freshly disturbed earth, concealing the remains of his victims, a grim testament to his insidious pursuits. As forensic specialists endeavored to identify the fallen, Detective Morris revisited Sarah's abode, the concealed passages now sealed off. Yet whispers persisted among the residents of lingering echoes within the walls. During the installation of enhanced security measures, a cryptic find emerged, a contemporary notebook nestled in a corner where the ceiling met the wall. Its initial page bore a solitary message: my old refuge uncovered, yet my new abode eludes detection. Familiar script adorned its pages, culminating in a crude illustration of Sarah's dwelling, a crimson trail marking a clandestine passage and a looming date. Urgency gripped the authorities as they raced to secure Sarah, only to find her dwelling deserted, abandoned electronics, running water, and a cryptic message etched on a steamed mirror, "Look up." A removed ceiling panel above the shower unveiled a void, underscoring Sarah's peril and the looming threat of Edward's pursuit. The elusive Edward Mercer, a former construction artisan skilled in renovations, remains at large, his intricate knowledge of structures facilitating his covert network. Thermal scans of Sarah's residence bore no signs of occupancy within the walls, leaving her fate enshrouded in uncertainty. Linked to a string of vanishings spanning multiple states, Sarah Coleman's plight serves as a cautionary tale for landlords and inhabitants alike, for warning of concealed spaces and clandestine watchers. Haunted by the specter of Sarah's silent vigil, Detective Morris finds himself ensnared in nocturnal reverie, pondering the unseen ears that may linger in the shadows. The phantom footfalls that once echoed above Sarah persist as a haunting refrain, a testament to the chilling legacy of a man hidden within the walls, awaiting his next unsuspecting prey. Story 15. The dwelling sat untouched for years, shrouded in whispers of a vanished young woman. When the new occupants ventured inside, they encountered a bedroom sealed with a mysterious aura. Breaking the barrier revealed a room frozen in time, veiled in a cocoon of dust and enigma. The bed lay pristine, the mirror gleamed spotless. A solitary candle had withered to a mere memory, its essence spilled like crystalline tears. Amidst this eerie tableau, a notebook beckoned, its pages adorned with fresh ink. Detective Morgan delved into the journal as forensic experts combed for clues. The meticulous script belonged to Elise Winters, a ghostly figure lost to the shadows for 5 silent years. Her elegant penmanship wove a tale of meticulous precision until the final entry bore a weight of urgency. "I feel his eyes upon me tonight," her words echoed from the page. The familiar car circles unseen. My pleas for aid fall on deaf ears. Should fate intervene, no, it was no random chance. The detective sealed the notebook, preserving its secrets in an evidence vault. A lingering scent, a faint whisper of chemicals, lingered in the room, mingling with the palpable dust of neglect. The landlord stood aghast, his pallor reflecting the unearthly stillness that gripped the air. Every corner was scrutinized before offering it for lease, he murmured, disbelief tainting his voice. That door was never meant to be locked. Elise, a paralegal entwined in the labyrinthine realm of Harriman and Associates, had unearthed a web of deceit within the firm's corridors. Her colleagues painted a portrait of a diligent soul, veiled in solitude before her vanishing act. Late hours became her refuge, her supervisor confessed to the probing investigators. She stumbled upon discrepancies buried in the Westridge acquisition files, numbers twisted, documents aged beyond their years. Photographs of Elise, a tapestry of auburn tresses and calculating eyes, adorned the detective's gaze. The woman captured in those frames exuded an air of calculated resolve, too poised to fade into oblivion, too methodical to vanish without a trace. The room divulged scant secrets, a void of conflict, a canvas untouched by violence, a frozen moment in time, a tableau awaiting its protagonist's return. Beneath the silent vigil of the unlit candle, revelations awaited discovery. The forensic team unearthed a hidden cache, a waterproof vessel cradling a key and a flash drive. The key unveiled a trove within a bank's safe deposit, harboring digital whispers and clandestine truths. The contents unfurled a sinister dance of deceit, orchestrating a symphony of falsified data and silenced screams. The truth unfurled its tendrils, ensnaring the firm's senior partner, Vincent Harriman, in a web of his making. The facade of corporate integrity crumbled under the weight of manipulated truths and concealed horrors. Elise's voice, a beacon of righteousness, echoed through the shadows of corruption, unveiling the cost of silence. As the noose tightened around Harriman's neck, shadows of doubt cast their pall over the enigma of Elise's fate. The locked room harbored a passage to the underworld, a gateway to the truth concealed within the bowels of the earth. Vincent Harriman's guise of innocence crumbled under the weight of hidden passages and damning revelations. Echoes of justice reverberated through the courtroom as Elise's legacy stood as a testament to unyielding truth. Her presence lingered in the vacant rooms, a specter of defiance against the darkness that sought to engulf her. The house stood as a monument to her sacrifice, a sentinel guarding the secrets she unearthed. The new inhabitants dared not tread upon the threshold of the haunted abode, leaving it to the whispers of the night. A flicker of light danced in the upper chamber, a beacon of hope amidst the shadows, a tribute to the woman who defied the odds and found solace in the silence of her final refuge. Story 16. The mystery arrived unannounced, wrapped in a veil of secrecy. A package devoid of clues, no return label, no traceable number, just a nondescript cardboard box kissed by the morning dew. It wasn't intended for her, the address matched, but the name was a stranger's. The sensible choice would have been to disregard it, to leave it untouched on the doorstep. Yet curiosity whispered its seductive call, and she succumbed. Sarah Miller, drawn by the enigma, peeled away the tape, anticipating mundane contents like books or garments. Instead, nestled within was a VHS tape, accompanied by a solitary sticky note bearing a simple directive: watch alone. Sarah cradled the black plastic cassette in her hands, its weight carrying an inexplicable heaviness, as if burdened by forbidden secrets. Her fingertips danced along the weathered edges, exploring the imperfections etched into the casing. The handwritten note bore the imprint of urgency, each stroke pressed with fervor onto the paper. Meanwhile, the suburban backdrop maintained its ordinary rhythm: a distant dog's bark, children's laughter, the distant hum of a lawnmower, a world oblivious to the clandestine delivery at Sarah's threshold. Bringing the mysterious package inside, Sarah hesitated, uncertainty clouding her thoughts. The name Daniel Whitaker held no significance in her realm. 4 years in that house, and never had she encountered mail addressed to him. The former occupants, the Johnsons, had bid farewell to the abode, seeking proximity to their grandchildren. A tug-of-war between curiosity and apprehension ensued as she eyed her dormant VCR, a relic of nostalgia. There was an alluring pull to the tape, a riddle shrouded in worn plastic. Against her inner voice of caution, Sarah slid the tape into the machine. Initially, the screen flickered with static, a blank canvas morphing into focus. A dimly lit room materialized, bathed in the soft glow of a lone lamp. The camera angle skewed, hinting at hastiness in its placement. A man occupied a wooden chair, his features initially obscured by shadows. "My name is Daniel Whitaker." His voice, soft yet resolute, pierced the silence. "If you're watching this, someone has found you, and that means they'll find me too." Leaning in, he unveiled a countenance etched with weariness and vigilance, sunken eyes, stubbled jaw, tousled hair. "I am innocent, you must understand that, but they framed me with planted evidence, my fingerprints, my DNA, though I never laid a hand on her." The camera trembled as Daniel adjusted it, offering glimpses of the stark room, barren walls, sparse furnishings, a transient abode for a fugitive soul. They orchestrated it all. "The narrative will paint me as her acquaintance, our fictional quarrels, witnesses to our disputes. None of it holds truth. I crossed paths with Catherine Walsh only through the news. His voice quivered slightly. Lifeless, murdered in her own sanctuary, and yet my genetic imprint tainted the crime scene. Detective Eliza Ramirez scrutinized an identical VHS tape on her desk, the fifth in a series of haunting missives from Daniel Whitaker, the prime suspect in Catherine Walsh's homicide, who had vanished into the shadows on the day of her grim discovery. Initially, the Walsh case had seemed straightforward: a young professional, strangled in her domicile, no signs of forced entry, the damning DNA evidence pointing squarely at Whitaker, his fingerprints catalogued from a previous trifling transgression. Eyewitnesses reported sightings of a man matching his description prowling near her residence in the days leading to her demise. A seamless closure until the emergence of the tapes. The tapes add layers to the enigma, Detective Ramirez intoned into her recorder, updating her case log. Whitaker spins an intricate web of misdirection or unveils a darker reality. Her evidence bore a mosaic of Catherine Walsh's vibrant smiles, chilling crime scene snapshots, maps tracing the tape recipients, and at its core, Daniel Whitaker's haunting portrait beseeched her for answers. A pivotal revelation surfaced when Ramirez unearthed Catherine Walsh's involvement in a whistleblowing crusade against PharmaCorp, a pharmaceutical giant entwined with governmental contracts. Walsh had unearthed discrepancies in their clinical trials, unearthing the buried truth of perilous side effects concealed in a hastily launched drug. She was a whistleblower, a former confidant murmured during an interview, casting wary glances at the exit. Catherine possessed damning evidence exposing the executive's awareness of the cover-up. Her testimony was imminent. The detective stumbled upon anomalies, meticulously placed DNA evidence, testimonies scripted with eerie precision, security footage mysteriously tainted during the crucial hours surrounding the murder. Sarah Miller received a second package, a trove of incriminating documents, clinical reports, confidential memos, email transcripts, all bearing Catherine Walsh's digital seal of authenticity. The investigative compass veered as Ramirez forged alliances with the other tape recipients, unraveling Whitaker's cryptic breadcrumb trail. A former IT security personnel for a PharmaCorp contractor, Whitaker had chanced upon Catherine's name ensnared in clandestine surveillance, a thread that led to his grim fate. They were monitoring her, Whitaker disclosed in a subsequent tape. I glimpsed the surveillance directives in their systems. They knew of her quest for truth, and then I found myself locked out. The next sunrise she was gone, and my hands were dubbed as the weapon. The case's pivotal zenith arrived when Sarah Miller discerned a crucial detail in her tape, a reflection in a window, unveiling a row of storage units. Collaborating with Ramirez, they unveiled the sanctuary. Within Unit 217 lay the crux, Whitaker's journal chronicling the conspiracy, Catherine's original dossier, and damning blueprints penned by PharmaCorp's security chief, orchestrating Whitaker's downfall. Justice unfurled not through a dramatic apprehension, but via the steady accretion of irrefutable truths. 3 executives faced indictment, the security chief confessing to secure a deal against his accomplices. The tainted drug faced removal from consideration. Emerging from the shadows, Daniel Whitaker, gaunt and marked by his fugitive sojourn, witnessed the charges dissolve, though the scars of accusation lingered. A brief encounter on Sarah's porch marked the reunion of the erstwhile suspect and unwitting observer. "Why me?" she probed. "Why choose my doorstep for the truth?" Weariness pooled in his gaze. "The algorithm deemed you a sanctuary, a soul untainted by my or Catherine's tale, a beacon of impartiality amidst the storm of accusations." The one suspect and the inadvertent ally stood in silent communion, pondering the frail boundary between justice and crafted falsehoods. Sarah's voice punctuated the quiet air. The misguided address unveiled the truth. The VHS relics, catalogued as evidence, stood as tangible emblems of serendipitous revelations, beckoning to those audacious enough to delve beyond the surface. Story 17. In the small town nestled among whispering trees, there stood a house at the edge of the woods, shrouded in mystery. Its windows gazed out like darkened eyes, its porch bowed with the weight of untold years. No one in the town spoke of it, as if the very mention of its existence would invite unseen forces to stir. No one claimed ownership, no one recalled its origins. It simply stood, silent and brooding, a forgotten relic of the past. One fateful day, a group of hikers strayed too close to the house's looming presence. As they drew near, a chill settled over them, and their eyes fell upon a peculiar site names etched into the wooden siding, engraved deep as if to serve as ominous markers. Among these names, at the very bottom, gleamed one freshly carved, untouched by time or weathering, a name unfamiliar to all who beheld it, a name that sent shivers through the group. A call pierced the stillness of the night, echoing through the corridors of the local dispatch. It was Mason Wright, the leader of the hikers who had stumbled upon his own name etched into the abandoned house. The responding officers anticipated a routine report of trespassing, perhaps a juvenile prank gone awry, but what awaited them defied all logic and reason. Detective Sarah Keller arrived at the scene as dusk descended, her flashlight cutting through the shadows to reveal the weathered facade of the enigmatic structure. The names, 27 in total, cascaded down the eastern wall like haunting whispers of the past. Some names had blurred with age, almost fading into obscurity against the worn wood, while others remained sharp and distinct as if freshly carved. And at the base of this macabre list stood Mason Wright, the carving still bearing the scent of newly hewn wood. "I've never set foot in this place before," Mason declared, his voice tinged with disbelief, his breath forming wisps of fog in the frigid air. "How could anyone know my name here?" The investigation commenced with thorough background checks on each name adorning the wooden wall. The findings sent a chill down the spines of the detective team. Every name corresponded to a person reported missing over the span of 4 decades. Some cases had grown cold with time, while others remained open, a haunting specter in the minds of those left behind. Yet a common thread bound them all: the individuals had vanished while hiking alone, swallowed by the unforgiving embrace of the woods. Forensic experts meticulously documented each carving, noting the varying depths, styles, and weathering patterns. The oldest name, that of Rebecca Hansen, harkened back to a disappearance 37 years prior, a tale of a young woman who ventured into the forest and never returned, leaving behind only a solitary hiking boot by a babbling stream. Detective Keller delved deep into Mason's past, probing for any connection to the haunting names on the wall. His account remained unwavering: no ties to the area beyond this ill-fated hiking trip with his college companions, no link to the other missing souls immortalized on the wooden canvas. The focus of the investigation shifted to Mason's fellow hikers. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, provided snapshots captured during their trek. Upon closer scrutiny, analysts detected a disquieting presence, a blurred figure lurking in the background of multiple photographs, a phantom obscured by the gnarled fingers of the trees. "We never encountered anyone else on our journey," Emily insisted, her voice laced with unease. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller gave the order to explore the interior of the abandoned house. Within its desolate confines, layers of dust veiled every surface, broken furniture lay strewn about in disarray. Yet it was in the basement that a sinister tableau awaited discovery. Personal effects belonging to the vanished hikers lay meticulously arranged on wooden shelves, watches frozen in time, backpacks laden with memories, cameras capturing moments forever lost, wallets holding secrets untold. Each item bore a name corresponding to those engraved on the exterior wall, a chilling testament to a malevolent purpose. As the evidence technicians meticulously cataloged the grim tableau, hidden truths began to emerge beneath the harsh glare of ultraviolet light. Traces of blood, stubborn stains on the concrete floor, a silent witness to untold horrors futilely scrubbed away. Though no bodies lurked beneath the house's floorboards, the keen noses of cadaver dogs led the investigators to the dense heart of the surrounding forest, where the earth whispered of long-buried secrets. Amidst the intensifying scrutiny, Detective Keller noted a disturbing shift in Mason's demeanor. He recounted eerie incidents, muffled whispers caressing his windows, enigmatic footprints leading to his doorstep, but never away, spectral figures haunting the fringes of his vision. The authorities assigned a constant guard to shield him from the encroaching darkness, yet paranoia gnawed at Mason's sanity like a relentless beast. A breakthrough materialized when historical records unearthed a forgotten chapter buried in county archives. The house had once belonged to a reclusive hunter named Victor Blackwood, a phantom figure who had faded into obscurity 15 years prior without a trace. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones of fleeting glimpses of a gaunt, towering specter who shunned human contact, a specter who now loomed large in the shadows of the past. Armed with a warrant, Detective Keller spearheaded an expedition into the labyrinthine heart of the encompassing forest. What the search party stumbled upon sent shivers down their spines, a network of rudimentary hunting blinds cunningly positioned along frequented trails, a silent testament to a predator's meticulous calculations. Nestled within one blind lay a weathered journal, its pages a chilling chronicle of Victor Blackwood's descent into madness. From hunting beasts to hunting men, the entries evolved, each word a macabre symphony of twisted intent, detailing the selection and pursuit of his unwitting prey. A manhunt spanning multiple jurisdictions was swiftly launched in pursuit of Blackwood. Helicopters scoured the canopy with thermal eyes, while tactical units combed every crevice and cranny for the elusive quarry. Yet the phantom hunter eluded their grasp, slipping through their fingers like mist. Mason Wright's whereabouts became a haunting enigma, his presence dwindling like a flickering candle in the night. Officers dispatched to his residence found only an empty husk, the door left ajar, a grim portent of his vanishing act. On the barren walls of his bedroom, a chilling inscription gleamed, freshly carved, a harbinger of dread. The hunter becomes the hunted. Weeks stretched into a harrowing search for Mason, his fate entwined with the shadowy legacy of the enigmatic house. And during a secondary sweep of Blackwood's abode, a grim revelation unfurled. Concealed behind a false wall in the basement lurked a sinister workshop, a chamber of horrors housing woodworking tools, jars of preservatives, and a freshly carved wooden relic bearing a name not yet affixed to the wall outside. A name that struck fear into the hearts of those who beheld it, the light forensic technician who had combed through the house's secrets, now ensnared in the hunter's deadly game. The authorities erected a vigilant cordon around the house, surveillance cameras scrutinizing every approach, motion sensors poised to detect the slightest intrusion. The trap was set, a final gambit in a deadly game of cat and mouse. 3 nights cloaked in darkness, the sensors flared to life, signaling an imminent breach. Security footage captured a spectral figure materializing from the shadows, a towering wraith, limbs elongated, moving with a grace that defied nature. As the tactical units closed in for the kill, a sudden blackout engulfed the cameras, swallowing the scene in inky darkness. When the monitors flickered back to life, the figure had vanished into the night, leaving behind only a lingering sense of dread. To this day, the house stands sentinel, a silent witness to unspeakable horrors. Mason Wright and the forensic technician remain lost to the swirling mists of uncertainty, their fates enmeshed in the tapestry of the unknown. The investigation presses on, fueled by the echoes of similar disappearances in distant, wooded realms. The names etched on that forbidding wall have transcended mere mortals, becoming a whispered legend among those who dare to probe the dark recesses of the human psyche. Some officers dare not speak those names, fearing the darkness they may invoke. Others avert their gaze, shunning the very mention of the house that guards its secrets with a watchful eye. And the local hikers, wise in their caution, steer clear of that accursed place, lest their names join the silent chorus of the forgotten, the names no lips dare to speak. Story 18. The river flowed lazily that morning, its surface smooth as glass, undisturbed by any ripples. The fisherman's gaze drifted absent-mindedly until a glint of sunlight caught his eye, a suitcase bobbing near the shore. Initially dismissing it as discarded clothes, he ventured closer, only to be assaulted by a putrid odor, thick and suffocating. The case was encased in chains, its once sharp edges now corroded by exposure to the elements. As authorities pried it open, the contents unveiled a macabre truth, not clothes but hair, fingers clenched in a frozen grip. And at the very bottom, a chilling note whispered, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer arrived at the scene, her steps measured, her expression unreadable as she took in the grim tableau before her. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s with dark locks and pallid skin marred by the waters, lay in silent repose. The medical examiner worked meticulously, cataloging every detail before the body was gently lifted away. What struck Mercer was not just the disposal of the victim, but the eerie attention to detail in her presentation: manicured nails, freshly styled hair, adorned in lavish attire. Her fate was orchestrated, Mercer murmured, observing the tranquil waters caressing the muddy bank. She was not discarded but arranged with care, almost reverence. The victim was identified as Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent specializing in luxury properties. Divorced, childless, she resided alone in an affluent neighborhood, her life shrouded in mystery. Colleagues painted a portrait of a driven, meticulous woman who guarded her privacy fiercely. Her absence was noted when she failed to appear at a crucial showing, a deal that promised her the largest commission of her career. Investigations delved into Walsh's immaculate home, a picture of perfection that bordered on the surreal. Every aspect was flawlessly curated, every surface gleaming, but a hint of disarray in her office revealed a hidden drawer concealing a leather-bound journal. The final entry hinted at a lurking menace. He watches once more. Same car, different plates. A digital trail unveiled a haunting pattern in Walsh's inbox, an influx of messages from unknown senders, all bearing the same ominous phrase: "I see your perfection." Each missive arrived punctually, a sinister shadow in her digital existence. Her online searches hinted at a growing unease, a quest for security measures and self-defense tools. Mercer pieced together the fragments of Walsh's life, drawing a chilling connection between the meticulous crime scene and the stalker's fixation on perfection. "Our perpetrator is a master of precision," she confided to her partner. This was not a crime of passion, but a carefully orchestrated ritual. The breakthrough emerged unexpectedly from a local pawn shop, where Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace resurfaced. The culprit, a nondescript maintenance worker named Michael Linden, was unmasked through surveillance footage linking him to Walsh's building. His unassuming demeanor belied a sinister obsession, as evidenced by a trove of clandestine photographs adorning his walls, each woman a mirror image of the next, each captured in their most vulnerable moments. A hidden chamber in Lyndon's abode unveiled a shrine to his victims, a chilling tableau of their possessions, meticulously arranged hair strands, used tissues, keys, each item imbued with a sinister significance. His interrogation revealed a disturbing rationale, a twisted quest to rectify perceived imperfections in his victims' flawless facades. As Lyndon's trial unfolded, the full extent of his depravity was laid bare: the meticulous stalking, the calculated corrections to his victims' appearances, the callous extinguishing of their lives. Families of the fallen watched in numb horror as justice was meted out, condemning Lyndon to a lifetime behind bars. For Detective Mercer, the case was closed, yet a lingering unease pervaded her thoughts. What inner demons drove Lyndon to seek out these women, to mold them to his warped vision of perfection? The river meandered on, its waters concealing the horrors that had transpired, but on Mercer's desk, the chilling notebook stood as a solemn reminder, a testament to the darkness that lurks beneath seemingly ordinary lives. In the quiet stillness of the precinct, Mercer pondered the enigma of Michael Lyndon, a predator cloaked in banality, a phantom stalking the shadows, waiting for the tiniest flaw to expose the abyss within. Story 19. In the quiet stillness of the night, a faint sound echoed through the empty house. It was a mere whisper, a hushed plea that seemed to linger in the air like a secret waiting to be uncovered. Detective Morgan Reed found herself drawn to the mysterious call that had pierced through the veil of silence, disrupting the tranquil solitude of the abandoned property. The phone, illuminated by an eerie glow in the dimly lit kitchen, held the remnants of a message that defied logic. The voice on the other end belonged to a woman, her words laced with urgency and fear. "He's here." And then a heavy silence descended, shrouding the room in a veil of mystery. As Detective Reed delved deeper into the enigma of the call, she uncovered a tangled web of secrets that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the house. The phone, belonging to Catherine Sullivan, a woman long gone from this world, had somehow come to life, defying the boundaries of time and space. The investigation led Detective Reed down a haunting path, where the past intertwined with the present in a dance of shadows and whispers. The forensic team's efforts yielded little, leaving more questions than answers in their wake. How could a phone, once belonging to a deceased woman, make a call from a house locked in abandonment? With each passing day, the mystery deepened, drawing Detective Reed and her partner, Detective Walsh, into a realm where reality blurred with the echoes of the past. The whispers of the woman, trapped in the confines of the phone, echoed through the empty rooms, a ghostly reminder of a life cut short. As the investigation unfolded, a chilling truth began to emerge from the shadows. Catherine's journal, a relic of her tumultuous past, revealed a harrowing tale of manipulation and fear at the hands of her former boyfriend, Mark Jennings. The journal spoke of a love turned sour, of a desperate attempt to break free from the shackles of a toxic relationship. Armed with newfound knowledge, Detective Reed confronted Mark, unraveling the threads of deception that he had carefully woven to conceal his dark deeds. The buried phone, unearthed from its clandestine resting place, bore witness to the sinister truth that had long been buried beneath layers of deceit. In a twist of fate, Mark's elaborate charade crumbled before the weight of justice, his facade of innocence shattered by the damning evidence that spoke louder than words. The ghostly call, a haunting echo of a life lost, served as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a beacon of truth in a sea of lies. And so, as the walls of the abandoned house whispered tales of the past, Detective Reed stood vigil, a silent guardian of the voice that had refused to be silenced. The phone, now a relic of a bygone era, bore witness to the enduring legacy of Catherine Sullivan, a woman whose spirit lived on in the echoes of her final, desperate call for help. Story 20. The aged library faced its inevitable fate of demolition. The workers toiled tirelessly, nearing the completion of their task when a serendipitous event unfolded. Among them, a worker stumbled upon a hidden latch discreetly nestled within the recesses of a bookshelf. With a gentle click, the entire bookcase swung open, revealing a clandestine passage leading to a concealed chamber. The air within was dense, stagnant, untouched by human presence for decades. The chamber held no furniture, save for a solitary chair stationed at its center, firmly bolted to the floor. And etched repeatedly on the wall, the haunting words echoed, "I am still here." The foreman overseeing the construction swiftly summoned the authorities. What had begun as a mundane demolition swiftly transmuted into something far more ominous. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with 2 decades of experience, stood in the doorway with his flashlight, its beam piercing the darkness, illuminating the chilling message that adorned the walls. "Secure the area," Walsh commanded the officers, his voice resonating in the confined space. "No one disturbs anything until the forensics team arrives." The historical backdrop of the building added a layer of intrigue to the unfolding mystery. The library had once belonged to the esteemed Harrington family, who, following the unexplained disappearance of their daughter Rebecca, had generously bequeathed the building to the public. Rebecca had vanished during her final year of college, leaving no trace behind except for her abandoned car discovered near the woods. Despite exhaustive searches and inquiries, the case had grown cold, with the prevailing belief suggesting she had chosen to vanish and embark on a new life, a theory vehemently rejected by her grieving family, who steadfastly maintained that a darker truth lurked beneath the surface. As forensic experts meticulously scrutinized the hidden chamber, they unearthed hair and fiber samples embedded in the chair. The scratches on the wall, concealed beneath layers of grime, harbored minute traces of blood and skin cells. Initial analysis indicated that the biological material belonged to a young female who had evidently endured a fierce struggle within the confines of the room. "The chair was evidently designed for restraint," remarked the forensic analyst, gesturing towards the bolt holes and weathered leather straps still affixed to the arms. The occupant fought vigorously against their captivity. Detective Walsh assembled a team to delve into the intricate history of the Harrington family. A peculiar detail caught his attention, the timing of the library's donation to the community coinciding closely with Rebecca's disappearance. A seemingly innocuous gesture now assumed a potentially pivotal significance. Further inquiries unveiled a disquieting revelation. The contractor responsible for installing the bookshelf concealing the hidden room had been exclusively engaged by Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle and the patriarch of the family. Financial records divulged substantial payments to this contractor, surpassing standard renovation expenses by a considerable margin. Former library staff members were interviewed, each expressing astonishment at the discovery. None had been privy to the existence of the concealed chamber, although an elderly librarian recalled Maxwell spending prolonged hours alone in that section of the building after hours. She had assumed his seclusion was merely an attempt to save her uninterrupted reading time. Maxwell always insisted that particular area remain untouched during renovations, she recounted to the investigators. He contended that the original woodwork held historical significance and should remain unaltered. The investigation took a harrowing turn when forensic analysis confirmed that the DNA recovered from the hidden chamber corresponded to samples obtained from Rebecca's hairbrush recovered from her former bedroom. The pieces of the puzzle began to align, painting a distressing portrait. Rebecca had not absconded. She had been imprisoned behind the bookshelf, likely by a member of her own family. Armed with a warrant, the detectives conducted a thorough search of the Harrington estate. In Maxwell's study, a leather-bound journal secreted within a false bottom drawer was unearthed. The journal chronicled detailed entries spanning several months, revealing an unsettling fixation on his niece. The final entry sent shivers down their spines. She threatened to expose everything. "I could not allow that. The chamber will confine her until she comprehends." The investigators tracked down Maxwell, now residing in a tranquil coastal retirement community. Initially composed during questioning, Maxwell's veneer of composure crumbled when confronted with the incriminating evidence contained within the journal and the DNA findings. She was on the brink of ruin, he confessed tonelessly, devoid of emotion. Rebecca stumbled upon incriminating financial documents proving my embezzlement from the family foundation. The family's reputation hung in the balance. I could not permit her to shatter it. The truth unraveled in a chilling confession. Maxwell had enticed Rebecca to the library, subdued her, and confined her within the hidden chamber with the intention of coercing her into silence. However, the situation devolved when Rebecca made a bid for freedom during one of Maxwell's visits, culminating in her tragic demise. "I was overcome by panic," Maxwell recounted during his recorded admission. "I interred her beneath the chamber's floorboards and sealed it shut. Subsequently, I donated the building to ensure that section remained forever untouched." Subsequent ground-penetrating radar scans confirmed the presence of human remains beneath the chamber's floor. Excavation efforts unveiled the skeletal remains of Rebecca, adorned with the silver bracelet her parents had gifted her on her 20th birthday. The Harrington family stood witness to Maxwell's sentencing, somberly observing as justice was meted out at long last. Rebecca's mother clutched her daughter's retrieved bracelet, the sole memento they could lay to rest following years of anguish and uncertainty. The demolition of the library ground to a halt indefinitely, transforming into a poignant site of remembrance and introspection. Community members tenderly placed floral tributes at the entrance, honoring a life truncated prematurely and a long-concealed truth that had patiently awaited discovery behind a nondescript bookshelf. In a poignant twist of fate, it was Rebecca's poignant message, "I am still here," etched fervently on the walls that ensured her enduring memory and heralded the eventual arrival of delayed but unwavering justice. Story 21: The Realtor's Secret. The listing from the realtor made no mention of a basement, and the blueprints held no clues to its existence. Yet, as the family peeled back the old carpet in their new home, a hidden door revealed itself, adorned with a heavy, rusted handle. It took the combined effort of three to pry it open, unveiling a rush of stale air thick with the scent of damp earth. Descending the steps into the darkness below, they anticipated storage space but were met with an unexpected sight. A solitary chair sat beneath a swaying light bulb, casting eerie shadows across the room. Behind it, a row of photographs lined the wall, photographs of them. The Mercer family had moved into the suburban property during a winter of long nights and bare trees, seeking character and history within its faded walls. Little did they know the extent of history lurking within, waiting to collide with their present. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene with her partner, greeted by the fluttering yellow tape marking the perimeter. Mrs. Mercer's trembling voice had alerted them to the hidden chamber beneath their living room floor. With practiced precision, Connors instructed the forensic team to document everything before further exploration. The camera flashes illuminated the stairwell as they descended into the small basement space, its concrete walls painted a somber gray. The chair bolted to the floor stood as the room's centerpiece, beneath the harsh glow of the single bulb. But it was the wall of photographs that captured their attention, images of the Mercer family in their most private moments, meticulously arranged in chronological order. As they delved deeper into the investigation, they found no signs of forced entry or theft, only a profound invasion of privacy that had spanned generations of previous owners. Interviews with past residents revealed a disturbing pattern of short-lived occupancy and unexplained anomalies in the property's records. The breakthrough came when a contractor confessed to having gutted the house years prior, denying the existence of any basement or hidden chamber. Digital forensics uncovered a hidden memory card containing hundreds more photos of unsuspecting families, along with audio recordings capturing their intimate conversations. The investigation took a chilling turn as they unearthed the hidden monitoring station within the walls, revealing a journal filled with detailed observations by the house's original builder, Edward Kelvin. His disappearance from public records and the cryptic entries in the journal hinted at a disturbing truth that Kelvin had never left the house, instead retreating into its secret passageways to watch, record, and document the lives of those who dwelled within. After a 3-day manhunt, Kelvin was discovered curled within a crawl space, his presence in the house a manifestation of his delusional belief in ownership over its inhabitants. The families, including the Mercers, fled the property, leaving behind a legacy of violation and intrusion that extended far beyond physical walls. The trial exposed the extent of Kelvin's surveillance network, revealing a house designed as a voyeuristic apparatus from its inception. As the property was demolished and the ground filled, the families haunted by the unknowable breach of their privacy wondered if they had ever truly been alone within the walls that had once sheltered them. The lingering question remained, who else might still be watching, listening, waiting in the shadows of their former home? Story 22. A mysterious package arrived in the mail, shrouded in secrecy with no hint of its origins. Within the plain envelope lay a solitary brass key, its surface weathered by the passage of time. The homeowner, a woman named Sarah, couldn't place where she had seen it before, yet there was an inexplicable sense of recognition that tingled in the air. She tried the key in every lock she owned, but none yielded to its touch. It didn't belong to her world. Perplexed, she set the key down on her coffee table, and in that moment the silence of the house was shattered by a haunting sound. The old grandfather clock in the hallway, long dormant and broken, emitted a single eerie chime that reverberated through the stillness. Alarmed by this strange occurrence, Sarah turned to the authorities, reporting the unsettling discovery of the mysterious key. What began as a peculiar incident soon unfurled into a chilling tale of crime and darkness that would cast a shadow over the tranquil suburban neighborhood. Initially met with skepticism, the responding officer brushed off Sarah's concerns, attributing the key's arrival to a simple mistake. But Sarah's intuition whispered otherwise, a nagging sense that something sinister lurked beneath the surface. Reluctantly, the officer accepted the key as evidence, sealing it in a small bag that would eventually become the focal point of a sprawling investigation. The case landed on the desk of Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator from the Special Victims Unit, known for his keen instincts in unraveling enigmatic cases. The brass key sat innocuously before him, yet its presence exuded an unsettling aura that unsettled even the seasoned detective. Delving into Sarah's background, the investigation yielded no red flags. She was a retired high school English teacher, a widow with grown children living afar. Her life seemed devoid of any shadows, her past unblemished by any hint of malice. The forensic team found no fingerprints on the key save for Sarah's own, and the envelope divulged no clues save for a nondescript postmark. A breakthrough emerged when Detective Harmon decided to run the key's unique pattern through the department database, unearthing a connection to a cold case from years past. The key bore a striking resemblance to one found in a storage unit linked to a grisly crime scene, a place where blood-stained remnants and haunting photographs of unidentified women had once been discovered. The original investigation had hit a dead end, the perpetrator remaining elusive. Harmon pored over the dusty case files, tracing the key's origins back to a sinister past. As the pieces fell into place, a chilling realization dawned: the key was a harbinger of unspeakable horrors, a macabre link to a hidden world of darkness. The hunt for the key's sender intensified, leading the investigators to Harold Jenkins, a shadowy figure with ties to Sarah's past. Jenkins, a former neighbor with a cryptic history, emerged as the prime suspect, his trail shrouded in mystery and deception. As the investigation deepened, a sinister truth unfurled: a hidden chamber beneath a remote cabin. A chamber filled with rows of brass keys, each bearing a name and a date, a grim testament to lives extinguished by a predator's hand. The manhunt for Jenkins spanned far and wide, a race against time to prevent further tragedy. The community trembled in fear as the elusive figure, dubbed the Keymaster by the press, eluded capture, leaving a trail of dread in his wake. In a final, fateful encounter, Jenkins met his end, leaving behind a journal that chronicled his heinous deeds, a chilling confession to his dark obsession with Sarah, a testament to the twisted mind that had orchestrated unspeakable horrors. The investigation unveiled a chilling tally of victims, a grim reminder of the depths of human depravity. Families found closure in the wake of tragedy, yet the scars of loss remained etched in their hearts. Sarah, forever changed by the brush with evil, found solace in the embrace of a new beginning, leaving behind the echoes of a nightmare that had once tainted her existence. As the dust settled, the collection of brass keys stood as silent sentinels, testaments to lives extinguished and souls lost, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurks beneath the veneer of normalcy, waiting to be unmasked. Story 23. She never fancied venturing up there, but when the storm provoked a leak in the roof, she had no other option. The attic was a realm of forgotten treasures, shrouded in dust and cobwebs. Tucked away in the distant corner resided an ancient dollhouse, intricately detailed, its minuscule furniture meticulously arranged. However, as she gazed into its depths, a knot twisted in her stomach. The figures within were not mere dolls. They were diminutive, hand-carved replicas of her own kin. Each figure placed precisely where they sat downstairs, except for one. The figure meant to depict her stood by the attic threshold. Rebecca Morgan trailed her finger along the dollhouse roof, sensing the impression where the small wooden figure stood. The revelation sent a shiver through her being, unrelated to the icy draft whispering through the rafters. The dollhouse had no place there. This wasn't her childhood abode, but a rental property the family had recently occupied. The saga commenced with Rebecca's frantic call to law enforcement. Officers arrived at the suburban abode to find a distressed family, clustered in the living room, adamantly refusing to ascend the stairs. The lead investigator, Detective Sarah Harmon, initially brushed off their concerns as an intricate prank, or perhaps the product of an overactive imagination acclimating to a new dwelling. The minutiae is what struck me, Detective Harmon later recollected. Each miniature figurine captured a distinctive trait of every family member: the father's receding hairline, the teenage son's hoodie, even the small birthmark on the mother's hand. The course of the inquiry shifted when forensic teams unearthed fingerprints on the dollhouse that did not match those of the family. More disconcerting still were microscopic cameras embedded in the eyes of each miniature figure, all linked to a sophisticated recording system concealed beneath the dollhouse. Analysis of the Morgan family's movements in the days prior unveiled an unsettling pattern. The positions of the figures in the dollhouse not only mirrored where the family had been sitting that evening, but also replicated exact stances from various days, indicating someone had been observing them long enough to learn their routines. We realized we weren't dealing with a mere case of stalking, elucidated Detective Harmon. The perpetrator exhibited an obsession seldom documented in criminal psychology literature. The investigation unveiled a concealed basement entrance, camouflaged behind a false wall in the pantry. Within, investigators stumbled upon a makeshift living quarters, with evidence suggesting someone had been dwelling there even before the Morgans' arrival. Food wrappers, water bottles, and a sleeping bag hinted that the intruder had been residing beneath the family for weeks. What confounded investigators most was the absence of forced entry. Property records disclosed that the house had sat unoccupied for nearly a year before the Morgans moved in. The previous owners, an elderly couple, had both passed away within months of each other. Their son orchestrated the estate sale and subsequent rental of the property. Interviews with neighbors yielded scant information. Most had noticed nothing amiss, though one elderly woman sporadically spotted lights in the house during its vacancy. I assumed it was the real estate folks showing the property, she recounted to investigators. Never occurred to me that someone might be living there without authorization. The breakthrough emerged through digital forensics. Upon scrutinizing the surveillance system linked to the miniature cameras, analysts traced the data to an external server. The IP address guided investigators to a small apartment across town. Inside, they encountered walls adorned with photographs of the Morgan family and past occupants of the house. Journal entries meticulously detailed the daily routines of each family member. The most chilling discovery was a workshop housing dozens of partially finished dollhouses, each representing different residences in the vicinity. The apartment belonged to Martin Wells, the son of the former homeowners. Financial records unveiled mounting debt following his parents' demise. Instead of selling the house outright, he fashioned the hidden living space, continuing to reside there while collecting rent from unsuspecting tenants. The dollhouse was his command center, expounded the forensic psychologist assigned to the case. Each figure symbolized someone he surveilled. The figure of Rebecca by the attic door wasn't a threat, it signified his acknowledgement of her discovery of his surveillance system. During interrogation, Wells remained eerily composed as he expounded on his motivation. They were living in my house, sleeping in my parents' bedroom. I needed to ensure they were treating it with reverence. When probed about the positioned figures, he simply remarked, "I wanted them to know I was always watching." The psychological assessment unveiled a convoluted case of possessive delusion. Wells could not fathom the emotional turmoil of losing his childhood home and fashioned an intricate system to assert dominance over it. The dollhouse had become his means of possessing both the property and its inhabitants. The Morgan family never set foot in the house again. Rebecca later recollected that the most haunting moment was not stumbling upon the dollhouse, but comprehending its implications. Someone had been observing us all along, quantifying our lives, transforming us into playthings. The genuine horror wasn't the dollhouse itself, it was realizing that in his mind, we were mere puppets to be positioned and observed. Wells faced multiple charges of stalking, invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, and trespassing. The case sparked a reevaluation of real estate disclosure laws concerning deaths on properties and the obligation of agents to ensure homes are vacated properly before new occupants move in. During sentencing, the judge underscored the extraordinary violation the Morgan family had endured. You didn't just invade their home, you invaded their sense of security and independence. You witnessed their most intimate moments and replicated them for your amusement. What renders the case particularly unsettling to criminologists is how long Wells might have gone unnoticed had Rebecca not uncovered the dollhouse. Forensic analysis of his journals suggested he had clandestinely resided within homes for nearly 2 years, transitioning from one property to another, crafting dollhouses of each observed family. The Morgan family eventually found solace in a new abode far from the haunting memories. However, Rebecca confessed in her victim impact statement that she still inspects closets and crawl spaces routinely. She removed all dollhouses and miniatures from their new residence. "Some days I still sense eyes upon me," she divulged. "I ponder if somewhere, someone is still manipulating a diminutive version of me within a dollhouse I have yet to uncover." Story 24. In the attic, tucked beneath a worn blanket, they discovered it. A porcelain doll, ancient and fragile, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to hold secrets untold. Sarah and Michael, a young couple, stumbled upon this mysterious artifact in their new Victorian house, unaware of the dark legacy it carried. At first, they brushed it off as just another forgotten relic from the past, a relic of a bygone era. But as night descended, a subtle unease settled over the house. The air grew heavy, the silence thick, and when morning broke, the doll was no longer in the attic. It had silently taken its place at the foot of their bed, watching with its unblinking gaze. Detective Rachel Winters, a seasoned investigator, was called to the scene on a crisp autumn morning. The couple, Sarah and Michael, lay lifeless in their own home, their bodies posed in eerie positions as if manipulated by unseen hands. The room was pristine, devoid of any signs of struggle or forced entry, adding to the mystery that shrouded the house. As Detective Winters delved into the investigation, a chilling pattern emerged. The house had a history marred by tragedy, with previous owners meeting untimely ends under inexplicable circumstances. Whispers of strange occurrences echoed through the neighborhood, tales of shadows and laughter haunting the empty halls of the old Victorian. Forensic analysis uncovered traces of antique fabrics, remnants of a bygone era intertwined with the present. The absence of any tangible evidence pointed to a presence that defied the laws of the physical world, a ghostly specter that left no trace, only lingering whispers of its malevolent intent. The key to unlocking the mystery lay in the past. A newspaper clipping revealed the tragic tale of a doll maker who had once inhabited the house, a man consumed by grief over the loss of his daughter. His final creation, a doll imbued with a haunting resemblance to his beloved child, held the key to the sinister events unfolding in the present. As Detective Winters unearthed the dark secrets of the past, a chilling realization dawned. The doll was not merely an object of play, but a vessel for something far more sinister, a conduit for forces beyond comprehension. The line between the living and the dead blurred as the doll maker's twisted legacy exacted its toll on those who dared to disturb its slumber. The investigation reached a dead end, with no logical explanation for the inexplicable events that had transpired. The doll vanished, slipping through the cracks of reality, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and unsolved mysteries. In the silence that followed, a sense of foreboding lingered over the house, a palpable presence that defied rational explanation. And as the new owners cautiously explored the attic, they could sense a faint whisper of laughter in the stillness, a reminder of the dark secrets that lay hidden within the walls. Detective Winters, haunted by the memories of the case, retired from the force, carrying with her a burden of knowledge that could never be shared. The photograph of the doll maker and his creations remained locked away, a grim reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the threshold of perception. And so the old Victorian house stood silent, its secrets buried within the shadows of the past, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to awaken the dormant spirits that dwelled within its walls. Story 25. In a forgotten Victorian house, dust danced in the still air as she crossed the threshold. The abandoned dwelling, frozen in time with peeling walls and shrouded furniture, held a peculiar secret that defied logic. Every door she opened, every path she took, led her back to the same parlor, trapping her in a perpetual loop of eerie familiarity. The front door she entered through had vanished, leaving her stranded in a maze of unsettling repetition. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless body transformed the desolate Victorian from a mere curiosity to a chilling crime scene. Detective Sarah Lind observed silently as forensic experts moved through the shadowy interior like apparitions, unraveling the dark mysteries hidden within its walls. The house had gained a reputation among the locals for its strange phenomena, compasses spinning wildly, whispers of unseen watchers. Now it held secrets far more sinister than mere folklore. The medical examiner's hushed voice revealed the grim truth: Morgan had perished from asphyxiation, her serene posture in the parlor chair belying the violent end she had met. No struggle, no signs of distress, just a quiet departure from the world. The scene exuded a haunting stillness that sent shivers down the spines of seasoned investigators. Questions hung heavy in the air as Lynn delved into the circumstances surrounding Morgan's demise. A graduate student fascinated by architectural enigmas, Morgan had delved into the mysteries of the Victorian house, drawn to its enigmatic allure. Her journal entries spoke of strange phenomena, echoes that defied logic, doors that led to shifting realities. Her final words hinted at documenting spatial anomalies, a pursuit that had led her to a fateful encounter with the unknown. A trace of a rare substance found in Morgan's system puzzled investigators, hinting at a deeper layer of intrigue. Deleted messages on her phone unveiled a cryptic correspondence with a like-minded soul, someone who shared her obsession with the house's secrets. Whispers of the dwelling's memories, its desire to be known, echoed through their intimate exchanges, painting a picture of a hidden world waiting to be unveiled. Adam Reeves, an expert in architectural history and a confidant of Morgan, emerged as a key figure in the unfolding mystery. His insights into the house's deceptive design hinted at a reality beyond mere optical illusions. Yet, even as suspicions swirled around him, an alibi placed him far from the scene of Morgan's demise, raising more questions than answers. A revelation from Eleanor Blackwood's grandson unearthed a dark family secret, hinting at a legacy of unexplained deaths within the house's walls. Dubbed the Claiming, these mysterious passings mirrored Morgan's fate, pointing to a malevolent force lurking within the Victorian's confines. Journals spanning generations painted a grim portrait of lives lost to an unseen power, a force that defied comprehension. A hidden chamber behind the parlor fireplace unveiled ancient artifacts imbued with a potent energy, a connection to realms beyond mortal understanding. The carved figurine at its center bore witness to rituals long forgotten, its presence a harbinger of unseen forces at play. The residue of a rare substance tied Morgan's fate to a legacy of ancient power, a thread connecting her to a world beyond reckoning. As the investigation deepened, a chilling revelation emerged, a presence within the house, a shadow lingering in the dust, unseen yet palpable. Partial fingerprints, foreign to known visitors, hinted at a malevolent force at work, a specter haunting the halls of the Victorian. And when Adam Reeves met a fate mirroring Morgan's, the mystery deepened, the veil between worlds growing thinner. In his final testament, Reeves spoke of a truth that transcended physical confines, a perception warped by unseen forces, a reality bent to the will of the house. The key he clutched in his hand, a talisman of passage, unlocked the door to understanding, to a realm where truth and illusion intertwined. And as the investigation lingered, the house stood silent, a sentinel of secrets waiting to be unveiled. The Victorian, condemned and forsaken, stood as a monument to the mysteries that lay within its walls. Whispers of spectral lights and vanishing visitors lingered in the night, tales of souls lost to the house's inscrutable will. Some believed in a curse that claimed those who dared to unravel its secrets, while others saw in Morgan and Reeves a glimpse of a reality beyond comprehension. The truth, elusive and enigmatic, remained veiled in the shadows of the Victorian, a riddle waiting to be solved. In a house where all doors led back to the beginning, where time stood still and reality wavered, the mystery endured, beckoning the curious to venture into the unknown and discover what lay beyond the threshold of conventional understanding. Story 26. The cafe had become his sanctuary for countless mornings, same spot, same drink, same quietude. The barista recognized his face, yet his name remained a mystery to all. Then one fateful day he failed to materialize. When authorities inspected his customary seat, a forgotten wallet lay in his absence. Within its confines rested a driver's license with a face, but without a name or address, just an eerie void where his identity ought to dwell. Upon scrutinizing the surveillance footage, Detective Sarah Mercer could hardly believe her eyes. The enigma, now dubbed John Doe in official records, seemed utterly ordinary on screen. Of medium stature, unassuming features, clad in a navy coat and toting a weathered leather bag, nothing remarkable about him, which rendered his vanishing act even more disconcerting. "Replay it," Mercer instructed the tech expert. The footage depicted John entering the cafe amidst the bustling morning rush. He placed his usual order, black coffee, no sugar, and settled at the secluded corner table partially shielded by a leafy plant. Engrossed in scribbling within a notebook, he intermittently sipped his coffee and gazed out the window. Then came the pivotal moment, setting his wallet on the table, rising and heading toward the restroom corridor. Yet he never reappeared at his table, nor did he exit through any doorway. He simply evaporated. "Review the restroom footage," Mercer directed. "That's the curious part," the specialist responded. "He never stepped foot into any restroom. Every camera angle has been scrutinized. It's as if he dissipated into thin air." Back at the precinct, Mercer meticulously spread the contents of the wallet across her desk. The photo on the driver's license matched the enigmatic man, yet the personal details were conspicuously absent, blank spaces staring back. The credit cards bore no names, only strings of digits that led to non-existent accounts when traced. Neatly arranged cash in assorted bills, a receipt from the cafe dated 3 days prior, and a solitary business card devoid of text except for a faintly inked phone number. Dialing the number yielded a connection, yet silence echoed on the line, accompanied by the rustling of papers as if pages were being turned. After 30 seconds, the call abruptly ended. The barista who had served John for years had scant information to offer. He rarely spoke, always courteous though generous with tips. I believe he may have had an accent, but his voice was so soft it was difficult to discern. Did he engage with anyone here, hold conversations? Mercer inquired. Never, always by himself, always engrossed in writing in that notebook. The notebook remained on the table beside the forsaken wallet. Its pages were filled with what seemed to be intricate codes or encrypted text. Cryptographers from the department struggled to decipher its contents. Some pages featured sketches, architectural designs of edifices that bore no resemblance to any known structures in the vicinity. Mercer dispatched officers to canvass the neighborhood, armed with photos of John Doe. No one recognized him. No missing persons reports aligned with his description. His fingerprints eluded all databases. It was as though he existed solely within the confines of that cafe. In the course of her investigation, Mercer noticed a peculiar occurrence in the surveillance footage. Each morning when John entered the cafe, the timestamp on the camera flickered momentarily. The tech specialist dismissed it as a glitch, but Mercer harbored doubts. Returning to the cafe, she seated herself at his table. From this vantage point, she could observe both the entrance and the hallway leading to the restrooms. Suspended between them hung an ancient mirror, its frame intricately adorned with symbols reminiscent of those in John's notebook. Upon the arrival of the cafe owner, Mercer inquired about the mirror. That old thing, it predates my tenure, came with the building. A cumbersome relic requires 2 men to relocate. Has it ever been moved for cleaning or redecoration purposes? Not in my time. Why do you ask? Mercer approached the mirror, studying her reflection. The glass possessed a faint distortion, lending her reflection an uncanny depth. Expecting cool glass, she touched its surface, only to encounter an unusual warmth. The forensic team arrived to scrutinize the mirror. Upon detaching it from the wall, they unveiled a concealed hollow space behind it. Nestled within were numerous identical wallets, each containing a driver's license bearing the same photo but void of any identifying particulars. Adjacent lay a leather-bound journal brimming with entries spanning decades, inscribed in the identical hand as the notebook left behind. The final entry read, "The experiment must cease. They draw nearer. The opportunity is waning." Traces of John Doe's fingerprints peppered the clandestine compartment. Carbon dating of the earliest wallet hinted at its age of approximately 50 years, yet the photo portrayed the same unchanging visage. The journal entries alluded to experiments concerning temporal displacement and identity transference. Allusions to crossing back and window points were scattered throughout. One passage seized Mercer's attention. The cafe serves as a nexus, a juncture where realities converge. The mirror serves as the portal. When alignment is achieved, passage becomes feasible. As the investigation delved deeper, peculiar incidents unfolded in the vicinity of the cafe. Patrons reported witnessing their reflections moving independently in the window glass. Several attested to glimpsing John Doe seated at his customary table, though the security cameras captured no such figure. A breakthrough in the case emerged when an elderly woman reached out to the police station regarding the inquiry. Identifying herself as Margaret Keller, a former physicist involved in classified government projects, she recognized John Doe from the media coverage. His true name was Daniel Weston, she divulged, a brilliant theoretical physicist who vanished during a project involving quantum mirror surfaces speculated to facilitate the transit of matter between parallel realities. Keller furnished documents indicating that Weston had been declared deceased following a laboratory mishap. The date of his disappearance aligned with the earliest journal entry unearthed behind the mirror. He postulated that our reality coexists with myriad others, Keller elaborated. He hypothesized that specific locales functioned as vulnerable points between these realities' locales where one could potentially traverse. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Mercer revisited the caf. To her revelation, the edifice stood on grounds that once accommodated the very research facility where Weston had twalled. The caf had been erected directly atop the laboratory where he had vanished. The culmination of the case materialized when, while reviewing the surveillance footage in solitude late one night, Mercer discerned an overlooked detail in the recordings. Reflected in the mirror, a duplicate of John Doe Daniel Weston observed himself seated at the table, two iterations of the same individual coexisting. Hastening to the caf to inspect the mirror anew, Mercer encountered it shattered upon the floor. Amidst the fractured glass lay a final missive inscribed in a familiar script. The experiment concludes. The portal is sealed. Do not venture forth. The enigma of the phantom man lingers unresolved. The caf shuttered its doors not long after the investigation. The structure eventually razed. Daniel Weston's remains remained elusive. His notebooks and journals vanished from the evidence room under mysterious circumstances. Detective Mercer resigned from the force shortly thereafter. Locals occasionally spy her perched on her porch, fervently composing in a notebook akin to Weston's. Adorning her wall hangs a fragment of an antique mirror, its surface intermittently rippling when unobserved. Story 27, in the attic of memories, Sarah Winters uncovered a time capsule of faded photographs, each snapshot a glimpse into a past long gone. Among these cherished memories, a chilling discovery awaited her: a mysterious figure lurking in the shadows of her family's celebrations. The Polaroid pictures, relics of joyous occasions, held a sinister secret that only Sarah could unravel. As she sifted through the photographs, a sense of unease crept over her. In each picture, the same man appeared, his presence growing more pronounced with every passing moment captured in time. No one recognized him, yet there he stood, a specter on the fringes of happiness. With trembling hands, Sarah reached out to her father, seeking answers to the enigma haunting their family history. His baffled response only deepened the mystery, leaving Sarah to confront the unsettling truth on her own. Seeking closure, she turned to Detective Marcus Reed, a stoic figure in a world of shifting shadows and whispered secrets. Together, they delved into the web of deception woven through the decades, tracing the phantom figure's elusive trail across the years. Each photo revealed a new piece of the puzzle, drawing them closer to the man's identity. Through the detective's keen eye and Sarah's unwavering determination, they uncovered a connection to a dark chapter in the past, a chapter stained with vanished children and unsolved mysteries. The shadowy figure, once a ghostly presence in the background, now emerged as a malevolent force with a name: Robert Keller. A man with a sinister past, his hidden deeds unraveled by the relentless pursuit of justice. As the truth came to light, so did the chilling realization of the horrors concealed within the frames of the innocent family photographs. Sarah's world shattered as she confronted the grim reality that had lurked beneath the surface of her childhood memories. The revelation of Keller's nefarious deeds brought closure to long-suffering families, yet it left a haunting echo of sorrow and disbelief in its wake. The shadow in the photos, once unseen and unknown, now stood exposed in the harsh light of truth, a specter of darkness finally unmasked. Sarah's journey through the labyrinth of hidden figures and forgotten terrors had come full circle. leaving her with a profound understanding that some nightmares are not confined to dreams, but linger in the silent spaces between the moments captured on film. As she carefully placed the photographs back in the box, Sarah knew that the shadows of the past would forever haunt her, a reminder that even in the brightest moments of joy, unseen dangers may lurk, waiting to reveal themselves in the most unexpected of ways. And so she closed the lid on the box of memories, a silent sentinel of the past, guarding secrets better left undisturbed in the realm of forgotten dreams.